My daughter called me at 1 p.m. Dad, I'm at the police station. Mom's new husband beat me, but now he's telling them that I attacked him. They believe him. When I arrived at the station, the officer on duty turned pale and, stammering, said, I'm sorry. I didn't know the phone rang at 1:07 a.m. I know the exact time because I'd been staring at the ceiling for 43 minutes, counting the shadows cast by the streetlight outside my bedroom window, trying to convince myself that sleep would eventually come if I just stopped thinking so hard. I'd become good at pretending I wasn't awake at ungodly hours, pretending I didn't listen for sounds that weren't there anymore. The soft padding of teenage feet sneaking to the refrigerator, the muffled laughter from behind a closed door, the whispered phone calls that went on too long. The phone rang and my heart knew before my mind caught up. If you've ever been a parent, you understand that there's a frequency to late-night calls that vibrates differently than all others. It's not the ring itself, it's the silence around it, heavy and absolute, like the universe is holding its breath. I grabbed the phone from my nightstand and I saw her name, Maya, glowing on the screen like a distress signal from a sinking ship. Dad? One word. That's all it took to shatter me. Her voice was small, not the voice of my 17-year-old daughter who argued about curfews and rolled her eyes at my jokes and slammed doors when she didn't get her way. This was the voice of the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, convinced that my presence alone could keep the lightning at bay. This was fear stripped of all pretense, raw and trembling. Maya, what's wrong? Where are you? Dad, I'm at the police station. She was crying now, those hitching sobs that come when you're trying so hard to hold it together, but the seams just won't stay closed. Mom's new husband, he beat me, Dad. He beat me, but now he's telling them that I attacked him. They believe him, Dad. They believe him over me. I was already out of bed, shoving my feet into shoes, grabbing keys, grabbing my jacket. My hands were shaking, but my mind had gone crystal clear, the way it does when everything else fades away and there's only one thing that matters. Which station? The one on Riverside. Dad, please hurry. They're going to. I'm coming. Don't say anything else to anyone until I get there. Not a single word. Do you understand me? Yes. Are you hurt? Are you bleeding? My face, my ribs, heat. Her voice cracked. He was so angry, Dad. I didn't do anything. I swear I didn't do anything. I believe you. Hold on, baby. I'm coming. I drove like a man possessed. The streets were empty at that hour, just me and the ghosts of the city, and I ran every light I could. My mind raced faster than the speedometer could track. 3 years. 3 years since Caroline had left me for Richard Hartley. Charming, successful, country club, Richard, with his expensive car and his expensive smile, and his way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. 3 years since she'd taken my daughter and moved into his sprawling house on the other side of town, reducing me to every other weekend visits and phone calls that grew shorter and more distant as time went on. I'd seen the signs. God, I'd seen them, the way Maya's laughter had dimmed over the past year. The long sleeves in summer, the excuses for canceled visits. She was busy. She had homework. She wasn't feeling well. The careful way she'd started moving, like someone navigating a minefield. I'd asked, I'd pushed, and she'd shut me out, the same way her mother had trained her to shut me out of everything. He's wonderful to us, Marcus, Caroline had said the last time I'd voiced my concerns. You're just jealous. You can't stand that she has a real family now. A real family, as if I'd been nothing, as if our 15 years together had been erased the moment she decided I wasn't enough. The police station was a squat building that looked tired, even under the harsh glow of its parking lot lights. I parked crookedly, not caring, and burst through the front doors with the kind of momentum that makes people look up and pay attention. The lobby was institutional green, the color of waiting and bureaucracy. A few plastic chairs lined the walls, and there was a bulletproof window with a bored-looking officer behind it. But I didn't see him. I saw my daughter. Maya was sitting in one of those plastic chairs, hunched over like she was trying to make herself invisible. Her face, God, her beautiful face. The left side was swollen, already turning the purplish blue of a deep bruise. Her lip was split. And even from across the room, I could see the way she was holding her ribs, that careful, protective posture of someone who's been broken. Maya, her head snapped up, and when she saw me, she burst into fresh tears. She tried to stand, winced, and I was already there, crossing the distance in 3 long strides, dropping to my knees in front of her. I'm here. I'm here now. She collapsed against me, and I held her as gently as I could manage, feeling the tremors running through her body. She was so small in my arms. When had she become so small? Sir, you can't be back here. I looked up. A young officer, couldn't have been more than 25, was approaching with that particular stride of someone who thinks their badge makes them right. His name tag read Officer Hendricks. This is my daughter, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. She called me. She's a minor. Yes, and she's currently being held for questioning regarding an assault. She's the victim of an assault. That's not what Mr. Hartley says. I stood slowly, keeping one hand on Maya's shoulder. I want to speak to whoever's in charge. Sergeant Morrison is handling the case, but sir, I have to tell you, Mr. Hartley's statement is pretty clear. He says your daughter attacked him unprovoked, that he was merely defending himself. Look at her face. My voice was quiet, but something in it made the young officer take a half step back. Look at the size of her. She's 17 years old and weighs maybe 115 pounds. Richard Hartley is 6'2" and works out 5 days a week. Does that look like self-defense to you? I just work with the information I'm given. Sir, then you're given bad information. Dad, Maya's hand found mine, squeezed. Please, I just want to go home. Home, but where was home for her now? Another officer emerged from the back, older, harder, with the look of someone who'd seen too much and stopped caring about the details. His badge identified him as Sergeant Morrison. Mr. Chen? His eyebrows lifted slightly as he looked at me. I understand you're Miss Chen's father. I am, and I want to know why my clearly injured daughter is being treated as a suspect rather than a victim. Sergeant Morrison sighed, that long-suffering sigh of a man who dealt with too many emotional parents. Mr. Chen, we have a statement from Mr. Richard Hartley, a respected member of this community, stating that your daughter flew into a rage and attacked him. He has scratches on his arms consistent with defensive wounds, I finished. Yes, the kind someone gets when they're trying to protect themselves from being beaten. That's one interpretation. It's the only interpretation that makes sense. My daughter called me from this station, sobbing, telling me she'd been beaten by her stepfather. She has visible injuries, serious injuries. Has she been examined by a doctor? You're waiting. She has potential broken ribs. Her face is swelling. And you're waiting? Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down. And I'm going to need you to do your job. Something shifted in the room. The air changed. Sergeant Morrison's expression flickered from annoyance to something else. Recognition, maybe, or the beginning of doubt. He looked at me more carefully now, really looked. And I saw the moment his mind started working, connecting dots. Mr. Chen, he said slowly. Marcus Chen? Yes. As in Judge Marcus Chen? The silence that followed was profound. Officer Hendricks went pale. Actually pale. The color drained from his face like water from a broken glass, and his mouth opened and closed a few times without producing sound. I'm sorry, he stammered finally. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. We didn't. Didn't know what? I asked, though I knew. Of course I knew. That my daughter deserved to be believed regardless of who her father is? That a clearly injured teenager deserved medical attention and compassion rather than interrogation? That taking the word of a wealthy man over a battered child might not be the path of justice? Your Honor, Sergeant Morrison started. Don't. I held up a hand. Don't Your Honor me. You didn't treat her with dignity when she was just Maya Chen, scared teenager. You don't get to treat her differently because her father sits on the federal bench. What you get to do is start over. You get to take her statement. You get to photograph her injuries. You get to call an ambulance because I want her examined immediately and thoroughly. And you get to bring Richard Hartley in here for questioning Because I promise you, by the time this night is over, you're going to see exactly who the aggressor was. The charges, Officer Hendricks began. What charges? The ones you were planning to file based on the testimony of her attacker? The ones you were prepared to pursue without even hearing her side? Those charges? More silence. Daddy, Maya's voice was small again. Can we just go? I knelt back down beside her, took her hands in mine. Not yet, sweetheart. I know you want to leave, but we need to do this right. We need to document everything. We need to make sure that what he did to you is recorded, officially, so he can never do it again. Can you be brave for me a little while longer? She nodded, and in that nod I saw the strength she'd always had, the resilience that had carried her through the divorce, through the upheaval, through all the ways her life had been rearranged without her consent. Sergeant Morrison, I stood again. I trust you'll be handling this matter with the attention it deserves. Yes, Your Honor, of course. Hendricks, call an ambulance and get a female officer in here to take Miss Chen's statement, a proper statement. There's more, I said quietly, and something in my tone made everyone freeze. The scratches on Richard Hartley's arms? I want them photographed too, and I want his blood drawn for alcohol and drug testing. Tonight, because I suspect that when all the evidence comes together, a very different picture is going to emerge than the one he painted. On what grounds? On the grounds that I know my daughter. She doesn't lie. She doesn't attack people unprovoked. And I know Richard Hartley's type. I've seen dozens of them in my courtroom. Charming in public, monstrous in private. The kind who believes money and reputation are armor against consequence. The kind who thinks the right connections make him untouchable. I leaned closer to Sergeant Morrison, close enough that only he could hear what I said next. He touched my daughter. He hurt her. And I don't care how many country club memberships he has or how much money he's donated to the Police Benevolent Association. By the time I'm done, everyone is going to see exactly what he is. Sergeant Morrison swallowed hard. Understood, Your Honor. Good. Now, about that ambulance. As the station erupted into activity, suddenly, amazingly, everyone was moving with purpose, making calls, pulling out forms, treating my daughter like the victim she was, rather than the criminal they'd tried to make her. I sat back down beside Maya and took her hand. It's going to be okay, I told her. I promise. It's going to be okay. He was so angry, Dad, she whispered. I just asked if I could go to your house for the weekend. That's all I asked. And he started screaming about how I was disrespectful, how I didn't appreciate everything he'd done for me, how I was a spoiled, ungrateful brat just like my father. And then she touched her face, winced. Mom just stood there. She just stood there and watched. My heart, already broken, broke again. Caroline, the woman I'd loved for 15 years, the mother of my child, standing by while her new husband beat our daughter. Where is your mother now? At the house, with him. When the police came, one of the neighbors called. Richard told them I'd attacked him. And Mom, she backed him up. She said I'd been difficult lately, that I had anger issues. She said, Maya's voice cracked. She said I needed to learn respect. I closed my eyes, breathed through the wave of fury that threatened to drown me. Your mother is wrong, I said carefully, and I think somewhere deep down, she knows she's wrong. But that doesn't matter right now. What matters is you. What matters is making sure you're safe. What matters is making sure this never happens again. Can I come live with you? The question I'd been hoping for. The question I'd been dreading. Because as much as I wanted her with me, God, how much I wanted that, I knew what it would mean. The legal battle, the accusations, the ugliness that would spill out into the open. Yes, I said without hesitation. Absolutely yes, we'll make it happen. The ambulance arrived, EMTs who were gentle and professional. They documented her injuries, the facial contusions, the split lip, the 2 cracked ribs that made me want to find Richard Hartley and return the favor tenfold. They took photographs, everything by the book. As they were finishing up, another officer approached, female, older, with kind eyes. Ms. Chen, I'm Officer Rodriguez. I'd like to take your statement if you're feeling up to it. I want to hear everything that happened tonight, in your own words from the beginning. Maya looked at me. I nodded. Tell her the truth, I said. Every detail. Don't minimize anything. Don't leave anything out. The truth is your armor now. She squeezed my hand once, then released it, sitting up straighter despite the pain it clearly caused her. It started when I came home from school, she began, her voice growing stronger with each word. Richard was already drinking. He'd been drinking a lot lately, especially after he lost that big account at work. He was in a bad mood, and I knew I'd learned to read his moods, that I should just stay in my room, stay quiet, stay invisible. But I needed to ask about this weekend. As she spoke, Officer Rodriguez wrote, and I listened, and with every word the picture became clearer. Not just of tonight, but of the past year, the escalation, the abuse that had started as criticism and coldness and grown into something darker, the isolation, the fear. My daughter had been living in a war zone, and I'd been too far away to see it clearly. No more. When she finished her statement, Officer Rodriguez looked up with something like admiration in her eyes. Ms. Chen, you're very brave. This is a comprehensive account, and it's going to matter. I want you to know that. What happens now? Maya asked. Now we investigate, properly. And based on what you've told me, combined with the evidence of your injuries, I suspect the charges Mr. Hartley suggested will be going in a very different direction. Will he be arrested? That's not for me to say. But, she glanced at me, then back at Maya. Let's just say that cases like this have a way of revealing the truth. And the truth, in my experience, has a way of being its own justice. Yes, it did. After Officer Rodriguez left, I helped Maya to her feet. She was unsteady, but her eyes were clearer now, some of the fear replaced by something else. Resolution, maybe, or the beginning of it. Dad? Yes? I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner about how bad it was getting. Mom kept saying I was being dramatic, that Richard was under stress, that I needed to be more understanding. And I started to believe her. I started to think maybe I was the problem. You were never the problem, I said firmly. Never. Do you hear me? What happened tonight? What's been happening? That's not your fault. None of it. I hear you. Good. Hold on to that. Because the next few weeks are going to be difficult. There are going to be accusations and denials and probably some very ugly moments. But we're going to get through it. Together. As I led her out of the station, the same station she'd entered as a suspect and was leaving as a victim finally believed, I caught Sergeant Morrison's eye. He looked away quickly, and I saw shame there. Good. He should feel shame. But shame wasn't enough, not nearly enough. Richard Hartley had laid hands on my daughter, had hurt her, had tried to use his position and his charm to make the world believe she was the aggressor. And now he would learn what I'd learned long ago in my years on the bench. The truth, once exposed, is the most devastating weapon of all. No elaborate schemes, no dramatic confrontations, just the quiet, methodical collection of facts, presented clearly and irrefutably, until the narrative he'd constructed collapsed under the weight of its own lies. As we walked to my car, the first fingers of dawn were beginning to reach across the sky. A new day, a new chapter, and for Richard Hartley, the beginning of the end. I didn't sleep that night. After bringing Maya home to my apartment, the one Caroline had always called too small, but which suddenly felt like the safest place in the world, I set her up in the guest room with the extra pillows to support her cracked ribs. I gave her the pain medication the hospital had prescribed, watched her drift into an exhausted, medicated sleep, and then I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen. Old habits. Even in the digital age, I think better with paper. The coffee maker clicked on at 5 a.m., its pre-programmed schedule unaware that I'd been awake for hours, already 3 pages deep into notes. I divided the legal pad into sections: evidence, timeline, witnesses, strategy. Each section was filling up with my careful handwriting, the same handwriting that had annotated thousands of case files over my 15 years on the bench. But this case was different. This case was personal. And that made it both easier and infinitely more complicated. I knew the law. I knew how custody modifications worked, how domestic violence cases were prosecuted, how character evidence was admitted. I knew the procedures, the precedents, the pitfalls. What I didn't know, what I was discovering with each passing hour, was how much fury could coexist with calculated thought. My phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. Caroline calling. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Part of me wanted to let it ring, to let her stew in whatever panic she was feeling. But the rational part of me, the judge part, knew that every interaction from this point forward was potential evidence. I answered. Marcus. Her voice was tight, controlled, the voice she used when she was trying to manage a situation. I need to know if Maya is with you. She is. Oh, thank God. When she wasn't in her room this morning, I thought, you thought what, Carolyn? That she'd run away? That she'd done something desperate to escape the house where her stepfather beat her and her mother watched? Silence. A long-waited silence. That's not what happened. Really, because I have photographs of her injuries. I have her medical records from last night. 2 cracked ribs, Caroline, facial contusions, a split lip. I have her statement to the police. I have the officer's observations. What do you have? Richard's version of events? He was defending himself. She came at him. Stop. My voice was quiet, but something in it made her breath catch. Just stop. I've heard the lies and I'm not interested in hearing more. Here's what's going to happen. Maya is staying with me. She's not going back to that house. I'll be filing for emergency custody modification first thing Monday morning, and given the circumstances, I expect it will be granted. You can't just, I absolutely can, and I will. You can either cooperate with this process, or you can fight it and watch as every piece of evidence I present makes you look like the mother who stood by while her husband beat her child. Your choice. Another silence. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, softer, pleading. Marcus, please, you don't understand. Richard, he's under so much pressure at work. He lost a major account, and he's been drinking more than usual. He didn't mean to hurt her. He just lost control for a moment. A moment. I let the word hang there. Carolyn, our daughter has 2 broken ribs. Her face looks like she went 3 rounds with a heavyweight boxer. That's not a moment. That's a sustained assault. And the fact that you're making excuses for him tells me everything I need to know about your judgment. I'm trying to keep this family together, at the cost of your daughter's safety. What kind of family is that worth keeping? She was crying now. I could hear it in her breathing, those familiar sounds of Caroline when she'd lost control of a situation. Part of me, the part that remembered the woman I'd loved, the woman who'd laughed at my terrible jokes and held my hand when my father died, that part felt something. Not quite sympathy, but something adjacent to it. The rest of me felt nothing but cold determination. I'm going to have her things sent over, I said, her clothes, her school materials, her personal items. You can pack them, or I can send someone to do it, but they need to be here by tomorrow. You're taking her away from me. No, Caroline, you drove her away. There's a difference. I hung up before she could respond. Maya slept until almost noon. When she finally emerged from the guest room, moving slowly, carefully, she looked both younger and older than her 17 years. The bruising on her face had deepened overnight, the purple now edged with sickly yellow, but her eyes were clear. Coffee? I asked. Please. I poured her a cup, fixed it the way she liked, more cream than coffee, 3 shakers. She settled into a chair at the kitchen table, wincing as the movement pulled at her ribs. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. A ghost of her old humor. Oh, wait, I kind of did. Maya, I know, Dad, I know, it's not funny. She wrapped her hands around the coffee mug. I don't know what I am. Relieved? Terrified? Angry? All of it at once? That sounds about right. She looked at the legal pad, at my pages of notes. What's all that? Strategy. Evidence collection. I'm building a case. Against Richard? Against Richard for the assault, yes, but also for custody modification. I want you living here, Maya, permanently, if that's what you want. Her eyes filled with tears. More than anything. Then we're going to make it happen. But I need you to understand something. This process, it's going to be difficult. Richard has resources. He has connections. He's going to fight back, and he's going to fight dirty. He's going to try to paint you as the aggressor, as troubled, as lying. He's going to try to paint me as a vindictive ex-husband using our daughter to get back at your mother. Are you prepared for that? She nodded slowly. I'm prepared for anything that means I don't have to go back there. Good. Now I need to ask you some questions, difficult questions. And I need you to answer them as completely and honestly as you can. Can you do that? Yes. I pulled the legal pad closer. Let's start with the pattern. You mentioned last night that this wasn't the first time. When did Richard's behavior start changing? Maya took a deep breath, and then she started talking. For the next 2 hours, I listened as my daughter recounted the past year of her life. The story that emerged was textbook. I'd seen it dozens of times in my courtroom. That slow escalation of abuse that starts with criticism and control and builds toward violence. First, it was Richard criticizing her appearance, her grades, her friends. You're not living up to your potential. You're wasting your mother's money. You're disrespectful. Then came the restrictions. No more seeing certain friends. No more after-school activities. Home by a certain time, no exceptions. Then the isolation. Your father is poisoning you against us. You spend too much time with him. You need to focus on your real family. Then the threats, the slammed doors, the holes punched in walls, objects thrown, and finally, inevitably, the violence turned toward her. Why didn't you tell me? I asked when she'd finished. Not accusatory, just broken. Because Mom kept saying I was overreacting, that I was being dramatic, that Richard was stressed, and I needed to be more understanding. And she's my mom, Dad. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that if I just tried harder, if I was quieter, if I was more respectful, it would stop. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Classic victim mentality, right? I learned about it in psychology class. I just never thought I'd be living it. You're not a victim anymore, I said firmly. From this moment forward, you're a survivor. And survivors don't just endure, they prevail. Is that from one of your courtroom speeches? Maybe. It's a good one. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in what seemed like days. Thanks. Now, here's what I need you to do. I need you to write down everything. Every incident you can remember. Dates if you know them, approximate dates if you don't. What happened, what was said, who was present. Include your mother's reactions or lack thereof. Include any witnesses, friends you told, teachers who might have noticed something. Anyone. That's going to be a long document. Good. The longer the better. Evidence, Maya. Evidence is everything. She nodded. And I saw something in her eyes that I recognized. That same look of determination I saw in the mirror every morning. My daughter, so much stronger than anyone gave her credit for. There's something else, she said quietly. What? Richard's drinking. It's gotten really bad. Like really bad. He hides bottles around the house. Mom finds them and throws them away, but he just buys more. And he drives. Dad, he drives drunk all the time. He's picked me up from school when he's been clearly intoxicated. I've refused to get in the car a few times, and he's gotten furious. I wrote this down, my mind already racing. Do you have any proof of this? Texts, photos, anything? I might have some videos. On my phone, I started recording things. About 6 months ago. I don't know why. Maybe I knew somewhere that I'd need proof someday. That no one would believe me otherwise. I set down my pen. Maya, you have videos? A few of him drinking and then getting in his car, of him yelling at me. There's one from about a month ago where he's screaming at Mom about money, and you can see the bottle of vodka in his hand. And she hesitated. There's one from last night. I managed to hit record on my phone before it got really bad. The video's mostly of the ceiling, but you can hear everything. My heart was pounding. Where's your phone now? In my backpack. The police gave me back my things before we left. Maya, this is incredibly important. Those videos, they're evidence, crucial evidence. And the one from last night with audio of the assault, That could be case-changing. I know, that's why I kept them. Even when he was hitting me, part of my brain was thinking about evidence, about proof, about making sure that this time, someone would have to believe me. I stood up, walked around the table, and hugged her as gently as I could manage given her injuries. You brilliant, brave girl, you absolute warrior. Do you know what you've done? You've built a case. All on your own, while living in that house, you built a case. She hugged me back, and I felt her tears soaking into my shirt. I just wanted someone to see the truth. They're going to see it, I promise you. Everyone is going to see exactly what the truth is. After she'd gone back to rest, I sat with her phone watching the videos she'd mentioned. There were 6 of them spanning the past several months. Each one was a small window into the hell she'd been living. Richard slurring his words, getting into his Mercedes with a glass of amber liquid still in his hand. Richard, red-faced and screaming, calling Maya stupid, worthless, a burden. Richard, throwing a plate against the wall while Caroline cowered in the background. And then the last one. The one from last night. The video was dark, shot from what appeared to be the inside of Maya's pocket. She must have hit record and slipped the phone away. The visual was useless, just darkness and occasional glimpses of fabric. But the audio was crystal clear. Richard's voice, slurred and angry. You ungrateful little bitch, after everything I've done for this family. Everything I've provided. And you want to go running to your loser father? Maya's voice, small but steady. I just asked about the weekend. I'm allowed to see my dad. You're not allowed to do anything. You live in my house, you eat my food, you follow my rules. Caroline's voice, distant, placating. Richard, please, she didn't mean... Shut up, Caroline, this is between me and this disrespectful child. A sound, a sharp sound, palm meeting face. Maya's cry, short, shocked. Don't you dare cry, don't you dare, you brought this on yourself. More sounds, impacts, grunts of effort, his, cries of pain, hers. Richard, Richard, stop! Caroline's voice, but no sound of intervention. She needs to learn. She needs to learn respect. The recording went on for another 3 minutes. 3 minutes of violence, captured in audio with perfect clarity. When it ended, I realized my hands were shaking, and there were tears on my face. This was evidence. This was justice wrapped in a digital file waiting to be unleashed. I saved the videos to my computer, then to an external hard drive, then to a secure cloud storage account. Redundancy, protection. These files were going to change everything. That evening, I called my colleague, Sarah Martinez. Sarah was a family law attorney, one of the best in the state, and more importantly, she was someone I trusted completely. Marcus, what's going on? It's Sunday evening. I need your help. It's about Maya. I told her everything. She listened without interruption, and when I'd finished, she let out a long breath. Jesus, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I don't need sorry, I need strategy. Right, okay. First thing Monday morning, we file for emergency custody modification. Given the police report, the medical records, and the documented history of abuse you've described, no judge is going to deny it. Maya stays with you effective immediately. And the criminal charges against Richard? That's up to the DA, but Marcus, with that audio recording, that's assault and battery, clear as day. The DA would be insane not to prosecute. What about Caroline? What about her? She stood by, she watched, she made excuses, she backed up his story to the police. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Failure to protect. It's a harder case to make, but not impossible, especially with Maya's testimony and the pattern you've described. But Marcus, she's Maya's mother. Are you sure you want to go down that road? I want my daughter safe. I want everyone to know the truth. I want Richard Hartley to face consequences for what he's done. If that means Caroline faces consequences too, then yes, I'm sure. Okay, then we build the case. We build it methodically, evidence by evidence, until there's no room for doubt. It's what you would advise any client, right? Right. Then that's what we do. I'll start on the paperwork tonight. Monday morning, we file. And Marcus? Yes? This is going to get ugly. Richard has money, connections. He's going to hire the most expensive lawyers. He's going to try to destroy your credibility, Maya's credibility. Are you ready for that? I looked across the room at my legal pad, at the pages of careful notes, at the external hard drive containing evidence of a monster's true nature. Sarah, I've spent 15 years on the bench watching evidence speak louder than money, watching truth prevail over influence. I'm not just ready for this fight. I've been preparing for it my entire career. Good, because it's going to take everything you've got. I know, and he picked the wrong father to mess with. After I hung up, I checked on Maya. She was asleep again, her face peaceful despite the bruising. I stood in the doorway for a long time watching her breathe, remembering the tiny infant I'd held 17 years ago, the toddler who'd called me her hero, the child who'd believed I could protect her from anything. I'd failed her this past year. I'd seen the signs, and I hadn't pushed hard enough, hadn't fought hard enough to reach her. Never again. Richard Hartley thought he was untouchable, thought his money and his charm and his connections made him invincible, thought he could beat a child and walk away unscathed. He was about to learn how wrong he was. And the beautiful thing was, I wouldn't have to do anything dramatic. No confrontations, no threats, no schemes, just the quiet, methodical presentation of evidence. Truth laid bare in documents and recordings and medical records. Facts that spoke for themselves. The most elegant revenge is letting the truth do the destroying. Richard had handed me the weapons to end him. All I had to do was use them, and use them I would. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray, heavy sky that seemed to match the weight of what lay ahead. I'd called into the courthouse, something I rarely did. In 15 years on the federal bench, I'd taken exactly 4 sick days, 2 for the flu that had knocked me flat, 1 when my father passed, and 1 when Maya was born. But this morning, I made the 5th call. Judge Chen, is everything all right? My clerk, David, sounded concerned. Family emergency. I'll need the week. Can you reschedule my docket? Of course. Anything I can do? Just hold down the fort. I'll be back as soon as I can. Sarah Martinez arrived at my apartment at 8 a.m. sharp, her briefcase bulging with paperwork. She was dressed in her court clothes, tailored navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a severe bun. Battle armor. Coffee, I offered? God, yes. I was up until 2 a.m. drafting the emergency motion. Maya was awake, sitting at the kitchen table in her pajamas, her bruised face a stark reminder of why we were doing this. Sarah's expression flickered when she saw the injuries up close. Shock, then anger, then professional composure. Maya, I'm so sorry this happened to you, Sarah said, her voice gentle. I want you to know that we're going to do everything in our power to make sure you're safe and that the people who hurt you are held accountable. Thank you, Maya said quietly. Sarah spread the paperwork across the table. Okay, here's what we're filing today. First, an emergency motion for temporary custody modification based on documented abuse. Second, a petition for a protective order against Richard Hartley, barring him from contacting Maya. Third, we were submitting all evidence to the DA's office for criminal prosecution. What about Mom? Maya asked. Sarah and I exchanged a glance. For now, we're focusing on Richard, Sarah said carefully. Your mother's role in all this will be addressed, but one step at a time. She's going to hate me, Maya whispered. No. I reached across the table and took her hand. If she hates anyone, she'll hate herself for failing to protect you. And if she can't see that, then her hatred says more about her than about you. Maya nodded, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. Despite everything, Caroline was still her mother. That bond didn't break easily, even when it should. Now, Sarah continued, I need to go over Maya's statement with her. Marcus, I know you want to be here for this, but legally it's better if you're not present. You're a potential witness, and we need to keep everything above reproach. Of course. I retreated to my home office, leaving Sarah and Maya at the kitchen table. Through the closed door, I could hear the murmur of their voices, Sarah's questions, Maya's answers. Each word building the case, each detail adding another brick to the wall we were constructing around Richard Hartley. While they talked, I made a phone call of my own. District Attorney Morrison's office. This is Judge Marcus Chen. I need to speak with D.A. Morrison directly. It's urgent. A pause. One moment, Your Honor. Robert Morrison and I had known each other for 20 years. We'd started out as young attorneys in the same firm before our paths diverged, his toward prosecution, mine toward the bench. We weren't close friends, but we had mutual respect. And more importantly, I knew him to be a man of integrity. Marcus, what's going on? They said it was urgent. Robert, I need to talk to you about a case, a personal case. My daughter was assaulted on Saturday night. Jesus, is she okay? She will be, but the man who did it, her stepfather, tried to have her arrested for the assault. Claims she attacked him. Are you kidding me? I wish I were. Robert, I have evidence, substantial evidence, medical records, police reports, and audio recording of the actual assault. I'm sending everything to your office today, and I'm personally asking, that you take this seriously. Marcus, you know I take every case seriously. I know, but this one, Richard Hartley is wealthy, connected. He golfs with half the judges in the county, donates to police functions, sits on charitable boards. He's going to lawyer up with the best money can buy, and he's going to try to make this go away. And you want to make sure it doesn't. I want justice, that's all. I want my daughter's abuser to face the consequences of his actions, the same way any abuser would. The same way I'd rule in my own courtroom. Robert was quiet for a moment. Send me everything. I'll review it personally. Thank you. Marcus, I'm sorry this happened, to Maya, to you, but if the evidence is as solid as you say, Hartley won't be able to buy his way out of this, not in my jurisdiction. That's all I needed to hear. After I hung up, I sat at my desk for a long moment, staring at the wall of law books that lined my office. 15 years of precedents, procedures, and legal theory. 15 years of believing that the system, imperfect as it was, ultimately served justice. Now I was testing that belief with the most important case of my life. The emergency motion was filed at 10:47 a.m. By noon, the firestorm had begun. My phone rang at 12:23. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Marcus Chen? A smooth voice. Too smooth. Who is this? This is Gregory Whitmore of Whitmore, Hartley and Associates. I represent Richard Hartley. Of course, Whitmore was one of the most expensive defense attorneys in the state. I'd seen him in my courtroom a handful of times. Always impeccably dressed, always eloquent, always working to twist facts until they bent towards his client's version of truth. Mr. Whitmore, Judge Chen, I'm calling to express my client's deep concern about the allegations being made against him. Mr. Hartley is a respected member of this community, a loving husband, and he's been trying his best to be a father figure to Maya. What happened Saturday night was a terrible misunderstanding that got out of control. A misunderstanding. I kept my voice neutral, flat. Is that what we're calling two broken ribs and a split lip? Maya is a troubled teenager, as I'm sure you're aware. She's been acting out, struggling with the divorce, resentful of her mother's new marriage. Mr. Hartley has tried. Mr. Whitmore, let me stop you right there. If you're calling to negotiate, to plead, or to offer some sort of deal, save your breath. I'm not interested. If you're calling to threaten or intimidate, I'd remind you that I'm a federal judge and I know exactly what constitutes witness tampering. And if you're calling to offer your version of events, I'd remind you that I have audio recording of your client beating my daughter while she screamed for him to stop. Your client is going to face justice. The only question is how much of his money he wants to waste trying to avoid the inevitable. Silence. A long, satisfying silence. Judge Chen, I understand you're upset. Any father would be, but I'd urge you to consider the evidence carefully before— The evidence. Yes, let's talk about the evidence. The medical records showing injuries consistent with a sustained assault. The police report documenting her visible injuries. The audio recording capturing every blow, every scream, every moment of your client's violence. The history of escalating abuse that my daughter has documented with dates, times, and details. The video she took over the past several months showing your client intoxicated and violent. That evidence? Those recordings were made without my client's consent. This state is one-party consent for recordings, Mr. Whitmore. A first-year law student knows that. Try again. Another silence. Judge Chen, my client is prepared to be reasonable. He understands that tensions have been high, that perhaps he could have handled things differently. He's willing to attend anger management, to give Maya space to work toward reconciliation. Reconciliation? I laughed, and there was no humor in it. Your client beat my daughter, Mr. Whitmore. He broke her ribs. He split her lip. He tried to have her arrested for his crime. There is no reconciliation. There is only justice. Then I'm afraid this is going to get very unpleasant. It already is unpleasant. Your client made it that way when he raised his hand to my child. I hung up, not professional, not measured, but deeply, deeply satisfying. An hour later, Caroline called. Marcus, what are you doing? Her voice was high, panicked. Richard just got served with a protective order. There are police here. They're talking about criminal charges. This is insane. What's insane is that you're still defending him. He made a mistake. People make mistakes. Caroline, he beat your daughter. He broke her ribs. How many times do I need to say that before it penetrates whatever wall of denial you've built? She provoked him? She's been difficult lately. Stop. Just stop. Do you hear yourself? You're blaming a 17-year-old girl for being beaten by a grown man, twice her size. What happened to you, Carolyn? What happened to the woman who used to put Maya before everything? She was crying now. I don't know what to do. Everything is falling apart. Then let it fall apart. Let this whole house of cards collapse. And maybe when the dust settles, you'll see clearly for the first time in years. I love him, Marcus. I know you do. And that's the tragedy of all of this. You love him more than you love your daughter. And that choice, that's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is Maya having to choose between her safety and her mother. What's not fair is a child being beaten and then doubted. What's not fair is you standing by while he hurt her and then backing up his story to the police. Don't talk to me about fair, Caroline. You lost that right the moment you chose him over her. She hung up on me that time. Fair enough. That evening, after Sarah had left with promises to call as soon as the judge reviewed our emergency motion, Maya and I sat in the living room. The television was on, but neither of us was really watching it. Dad? Yeah? Do you think I'll have to testify, like, in court? Probably at some point. Why? She was quiet for a moment, picking at a thread on the couch cushion. I'm scared. What if no one believes me? What if Richard's lawyer makes me look like I'm lying? What if I freeze up and can't speak? I turned off the television and faced her fully. Listen to me. You have the truth on your side, not a version of the truth, not a spin on the truth, but the actual truth supported by evidence. The audio recording, the medical records, your documented history. None of that can be spun away or explained away. And more importantly, you have your own voice. You're articulate, you're brave, and you've already shown more courage than most adults I know. But Richard's lawyer will try to confuse you, yes. Will try to twist your words, make you doubt yourself, paint you as unreliable. That's his job. But Maya, I've spent 15 years watching witnesses on the stand, and do you know what makes the difference between a witness who crumbles and one who prevails? What? The witness who tells the truth simply and consistently. No embellishment, no exaggeration, just the facts as they happen. Richard's lawyer can spin all he wants, but he can't change the fact that there's audio of his client beating you. He can't change the fact that you have broken ribs. He can't change the fact that you documented months of abuse with videos and records. Truth, Maya. Truth is the most powerful weapon in any courtroom. You really believe that? I've built my entire career on that belief. She leaned against me, careful of her ribs, and I put my arm around her. We sat like that for a long time, the weight of the coming battle settling over us like a heavy blanket. At 9 p.m., my phone rang. Sarah. Marcus, we got it. Emergency temporary custody granted. Maya stays with you effective immediately. The judge also granted the protective order. Richard is to have no contact with Maya whatsoever. And get this, The judge made some pointed comments about the evidence we presented, used phrases like disturbing pattern and clear and present danger. He's taking this seriously. Thank God. There's more. The DA's office called me. They're moving forward with criminal charges against Richard, assault and battery, domestic violence, maybe more. They're convening a grand jury next week. I close my eyes, let the relief wash over me. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. And Richard's lawyers are going to appeal the custody order. They're going to try to get the criminal charges reduced or dismissed. They're going to come at us with everything they have. Let them come. We have the truth. Yes, you do. And Marcus, that audio recording, it's devastating. When the grand jury hears that, Richard is done. There's no amount of money or connections that can explain away the sound of a child screaming while being beaten. After I hung up, I told Maya the news. She burst into tears, not the tears of fear or pain that I'd seen too much of lately, but tears of relief. I don't have to go back. You never have to go back. You're staying here. This is your home now. He's going to be charged? Yes, he's going to face justice for what he did to you. And Mom? I hesitated. That was a more complicated question. Your mother made choices, Maya, bad choices, and there may be consequences for those choices. But right now, let's focus on you, on your healing, on building your life here. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Can I call Jess? She's been texting me all day, worried. Of course. As she retreated to her room to call her best friend, I sat alone in the living room thinking about what lay ahead. The emergency custody was granted, yes, but the full custody battle would be a war. The criminal charges were filed, but the trial would be brutal. Richard had resources, influence, and an attorney who specialized in making truth look like lies. But we had something more powerful. We had evidence that couldn't be denied. We had truth that couldn't be twisted. We had a story that, once fully told, would leave no room for doubt. Richard Hartley thought he could beat his way out of accountability, thought his money could buy silence. His charm could manufacture doubt. His connections could grease the wheels in his favor. He was wrong. The wheels of justice were turning now, and they were turning toward him. Every piece of evidence we'd gathered was a gear clicking into place. Every document filed was another step in his descent. And the beautiful thing was, we weren't doing anything dramatic or vengeful. We were simply letting the system work the way it was designed to work. Truth, methodically presented. Evidence, carefully preserved. Justice, inevitably served. Richard had spent years believing that the rules didn't apply to him, that wealth and status made him untouchable, that he could hurt and control and destroy without consequence. He was about to learn that the longest arm of the law belongs to the truth, and truth has no respect for bank accounts or country club memberships. The firestorm had begun, and it was only going to burn hotter. If you've ever been in a legal battle, you know that the silence between filings is the worst part. It's like being in the eye of a hurricane. You know the storm is coming, you can feel it gathering force on the horizon, but in that moment of stillness, your mind has nothing to do but imagine all the ways things could go wrong. The first week after the emergency custody order, Richard's legal team went quiet. No more calls from Gregory Whitmore. No motions filed, no statements to the press, just silence. I knew better than to trust it. They're regrouping, Sarah told me during our Wednesday morning strategy session. She'd spread files across my dining room table, her coffee growing cold as she mapped out scenarios. Whitmore is too smart to rush into this. He's building a counter-narrative. What kind of counter-narrative can he possibly build? We have audio of the assault. Marcus, you know better than anyone that evidence can be contextualized, spun, reframed. Yes, we have audio of Richard hitting Maya, but Whitmore is going to argue that Maya was the initial aggressor, that Richard was defending himself, that the injuries she sustained were the result of him trying to restrain her. That's absurd. She has 2 broken ribs. From falling, they'll say, from struggling, from the case of the moment. Sarah looked at me with the steady gaze of someone who's seen too many cases go sideways. I'm not saying it will work. I'm saying that's what they'll try. and we need to be ready. Maya was adjusting to life in my apartment better than I'd expected. Or maybe I just wanted to believe she was. She went back to school that Thursday, her face still bruised but healing, and I watched her walk through those doors with my heart in my throat. The school had been notified of the situation, discreetly, of course, and her teachers had been asked to keep an eye out. She came home that afternoon looking exhausted. How was it? Everyone was staring at my face. She dropped her backpack by the door. I told them I fell down the stairs. I don't know why. I guess I wasn't ready to explain. You don't have to explain anything to anyone, not until you're ready. Jess knows. I told her everything. She cried for like an hour. Jess is a good friend. Yeah. Maya slumped onto the couch. Dad, do you think people are going to find out, like publicly? Is this going to be in the news? I sat down across from her. It might be. Richard is prominent enough in the community that the criminal charges could attract attention. Are you worried about that? I don't know. Part of me wants everyone to know what he really is, but part of me just wants this to be over quietly, you know? I don't want to be that girl whose stepdad beat her. I don't want pity. You won't get pity from anyone who really knows you. You'll get respect for your courage, for standing up and telling the truth. You have to say that. You're my dad. I'm also a pretty good judge of character, literally. She almost smiled at that. On Friday, the silence broke. I was in my home office reviewing some of the documents Sarah had sent over when my phone rang. It was David, my court clerk. Judge Chen, sorry to bother you, but there's something you need to know. What is it? A complaint has been filed against you with the Judicial Conduct Commission. I just heard about it through the grapevine. My stomach dropped. A complaint? On what grounds? I don't have all the details, but apparently it's alleging that you've used your judicial position to influence the handling of your daughter's case, that you've called in favors, exerted improper pressure, that sort of thing. That's ridiculous. I've been completely above board. I called the DA as a concerned father, not as a judge. I know that, and you know that, but someone's trying to muddy the waters. My guess, it's coming from Hartley's side. They're trying to undermine your credibility. After I hung up, I sat very still for a long time, feeling the cold reality of what we were up against settling into my bones. Richard wasn't just fighting the criminal charges. He was coming after me, after my career, after my reputation. He was trying to burn everything down so that when the smoke cleared, no one would believe anything we said. It was a smart strategy, ruthless, but smart. I called Sarah immediately. I heard, she said before I could get a word out. Marcus, this is textbook. They can't win on the evidence, so they're attacking the messenger. They're trying to make this about you, your bias, your vendetta, your abuse of power, instead of about Richard's actions. Will it work? Not if we play this right. The complaint will be investigated as it should be. Everything you did will be scrutinized. And when they look at it, they'll find that you made one phone call to the dine, identified yourself as Maya's father, and asked that the case be taken seriously. You didn't ask for special treatment. You didn't demand specific outcomes. You asked for justice. There's nothing improper about that. And in the meantime, we continue building our case. We don't let this distract us. That's what they want, for you to spend all your energy defending yourself instead of prosecuting Richard. Sarah, if this complaint gains traction, it could end my career. I know, which is why we need to be squeaky clean from here on out. Every interaction, every filing, everything by the absolute letter of the law. We give them nothing. And Marcus, the irony here is beautiful. They're accusing you of using your position to influence justice while Richard tried to use his position to avoid justice. The difference is you have evidence of his abuse. What do they have? Speculation and innuendo. She was right. I knew she was right. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me like a physical force. Richard Hartley was willing to destroy me to save himself. He was willing to take down a federal judge, to throw my entire career into question, to paint me as corrupt and vindictive, all to avoid facing the consequences of beating a teenage girl. If you've ever doubted that monsters walk among us, wearing expensive suits and charming smiles. Let me assure you, they do, and they will burn the world before they let their masks slip. Saturday brought another development. Maya was at Jess's house, her first social outing since the assault, and I'd encouraged her to go, to try to find some normalcy, when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Caroline standing there. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, pulled back in a hasty ponytail, clothes wrinkled as if she'd slept in them. This was not the Caroline I'd known, the one who never left the house without perfect makeup and coordinated accessories. "Can I come in?" Every instinct told me to say no, to close the door, to protect myself from whatever manipulation or plea she'd come to deliver. But something in her eyes, a brokenness I'd never seen before, made me step aside. She walked into my living room and I stood there, arms wrapped around herself, looking small. "Can I sit?" "Go ahead." She sank onto the couch, and for a long moment, she just sat there, staring at her hands. "I don't know why I came here," she finally said. I needed to talk to someone who knew me before. Before Richard. Before all of this." "Carolyn, if you're here to defend him, I'm not." Her voice cracked. "I'm not here to defend him. I'm here because I think I'm losing my mind, Marcus. I keep replaying that night over and over, and I can't make it make sense anymore." I stayed quiet, letting her talk. "He was my Prince Charming, you know? After the divorce, after you and I fell apart, he was this perfect man who swooped in and made everything better. He was attentive and generous, and he said all the right things. And I wanted so badly to believe that I'd found happiness, that I hadn't made a mistake leaving you, that this new life was everything I'd hoped for. And so you believed it. Yes, even when things started to change. Even when he started criticizing Maya, I told myself he was just trying to help her improve. When he started drinking more, I told myself he was stressed from work. When he started losing his temper, I told myself it was temporary. Every excuse, Marcus. I made every excuse in the book because admitting the truth meant admitting that I'd destroyed our family for nothing. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "Do you know what the worst part is? I heard her screaming that night. I heard my daughter screaming in pain while he hit her. And I stood there, and I did nothing. What kind of mother does that? What kind of person have I become?" I didn't have an answer for her, or rather, I had too many answers. None of them kind. "And now," she continued, "now he's telling me that if I don't support him, if I don't back up his story, he'll destroy me too. He says he has financial records, evidence that I was complicit in everything. He says he'll take the house, leave me with nothing. He says," she looked up at me, her eyes wild, "he says he'll make sure I never see Maya again." "Carolyn, he can't he? He has the best lawyers. He has connections everywhere. He's already filed a complaint against you. Did you know that? He's trying to get you removed from the bench. He says once you're discredited, no one will believe Maya's story. He says," "Stop," I held up a hand, "stop. He's manipulating you. Can't you see that? He's using fear to control you, to keep you compliant. It's what abusers do." I know that. But Marcus, I'm terrified. I'm terrified of him, of what he'll do, of what he's capable of. I thought I knew him, and I didn't know him at all. I sat down across from her, studying the woman I'd once loved, the woman who'd shared 15 years of my life, who'd given me my daughter, who'd broken my heart when she left. She looked broken now, truly broken, and despite everything, I felt a flicker of something like compassion. "Caroline, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Not for me, not for Richard, but for Maya. Can you do that?" She nodded. "What happened that night? The real truth. Not Richard's version, not the version you told the police, but what you actually saw." She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Maya came downstairs. She wanted to ask about spending the weekend with you. Richard was drinking. He'd been drinking all afternoon. He was in a foul mood because of the work situation. She asked very politely if she could go to your place, and he just snapped. He started screaming at her about respect. about gratitude, about how she was always running to you. She tried to calm him down, tried to apologize, but he grabbed her arm. Hard. She pulled away and he slapped her. And then he just kept hitting her. Over and over. She was trying to protect herself, trying to block the blows, but he was so much bigger. I was screaming at him to stop, but I was frozen. I couldn't move. I just stood there watching him beat my daughter. And when the police came, Richard told me what to say. He said if I didn't back him up, he'd make sure we both went down. He said Maya was troubled, that she'd been violent before, that this was just the truth coming out. And I was so scared, Marcus. So scared of him, of losing everything, that I went along with it. I betrayed my own daughter. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of her confession. Thank you, I finally said, for telling me the truth. It doesn't change anything, does it? What I did, it's unforgivable. That's not for me to decide, but Caroline, that truth you just told me, that could change everything. If you were willing to give that statement officially, to contradict Richard's version of events, he'd destroy me. He's already destroying you. Can't you see that? Every day you stay with him, every day you protect him, you are losing another piece of yourself. Is that really better than facing the truth? She didn't answer. Caroline, Maya needs her mother, not the mother who stood by while she was beaten, but the mother who's willing to make things right. It's not too late. You can still... I can't. She stood abruptly, wiping her face. I can't do what you're asking. I'm not as brave as you, Marcus. I never was. She left without another word. I stood at the window and watched her drive away, feeling the weight of all the choices that had led us here. Her choices, my choices. The choices that had shaped our daughter's life in ways we'd never intended. When Maya came home that evening, I debated whether to tell her about Caroline's visit. In the end, I decided she deserved to know. She came here. What did she want? To talk, to unload, I think. She's struggling with everything that's happened. Is she going to help us? Is she going to tell the truth? I hesitated. I don't know, sweetheart. I think she wants to, but she's scared. Maya's face hardened in a way that made her look older than her 17 years. She's scared. She's scared while I'm the one with broken ribs. She's scared while I'm the one who was beaten. That's rich. Maya, no, Dad, I'm done making excuses for her. I've spent the last year making excuses for both of them, and look where it got me. Mom made her choice. She chose him over me, and now she's still choosing him by staying silent. People are complicated. I know people are complicated. I also know that when your child is being hurt, you protect them. Period. You don't stand by. You don't make excuses. You don't worry about yourself. You protect them. She didn't do that, and I don't know if I can ever forgive her for that. I had no argument, because she was right. That night after Maya had gone to bed, I sat in my office with my legal pad, updating my notes. The judicial conduct complaint, Caroline's visit and her unofficial confession, the mounting pressure from Richard's legal team. They were throwing everything at us, trying to overwhelm us, to make us crack. But here's what they didn't understand. Every move they made, every manipulation, every attack only strengthened our resolve. Every lie they told highlighted the truth we were carrying. Every attempt to discredit us only made our evidence more powerful by contrast. Richard Hartley was fighting dirty because he had no clean options left. And we were going to win because we had the only weapon that mattered, the truth. It was coming for him, inevitable as sunrise, and all his money and connections and lawyers couldn't stop it. The storm was building, and he was standing right in its path. 2 weeks after the assault, the cracks in Richard Hartley's carefully constructed facade began to show. It started small, the way all collapses do. A whisper here, a sideways glance there, the quiet withdrawal of support from people who'd once been eager to stand by his side. I first noticed it when Sarah called me on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice carrying that particular energy of someone who's just received good news. Marcus, you're not going to tell Liba this. Richard's country club membership has been suspended. What? Apparently, the board held an emergency meeting. Someone leaked information about the assault charges. Not the audio, just the fact that he'd been charged with domestic violence against a minor. The board decided that having him on the premises was inconsistent with the club's family values. Their words. That's unexpected. It gets better. Two of his business partners have requested meetings to discuss the future of their collaborative ventures. That's corporate speak for we're distancing ourselves from you before you sink us. I sat back in my chair processing this. Richard's power had always been rooted in his reputation. The charming businessman, the generous philanthropist, the pillar of the community. Strip that away, and what was left? A man who beat children. How did the information get out, I asked. Does it matter? These things always find a way. Someone at the police station talked. Someone at the courthouse. Someone who knows someone. The point is, the truth is starting to seep out, and Richard can't control it. He's going to be furious. Good. Furious people make mistakes. She was right about that. That evening, Maya showed me something on her phone. A text thread between her and several friends from school. Look at this, she said. Emma's mom works at the hospital. She told Emma about my injuries, not identifying me by name, just talking about this poor teenager who came in with broken ribs from domestic violence. Emma put two and two together and told some people, and now she scrolled through the messages. Now everyone's talking about it. Not gossiping, Dad, supporting me. Look at what they're saying. I read the messages. Kids expressing outrage on Maya's behalf, offering to help, sharing their own stories of family dysfunction, creating a circle of support around my daughter. Jess started a thing, Maya continued. She calls it Believe Survivors. She's not using my name, but she's been posting on social media about how important it is to believe abuse victims, especially when the abuser is someone with power and status. It's kind of going viral. How do you feel about all this? She was quiet for a moment. I feel seen. For the first time in a year, I feel like people are actually seeing what happened instead of what Richard wanted them to see. It's like the truth is finally louder than his lies. The truth has a way of doing that. Dad, can I tell you something? Always. I'm not scared anymore. I was terrified at first, of him, of what would happen, of not being believed. But now I'm angry, good angry, the kind of angry that makes you want to fight. I smiled at her. That's the Chen stubbornness coming out. Your grandfather had it, I have it. And apparently you have it in spades. Is that a compliment? The highest. The Judicial Conduct Commission contacted me on Wednesday to schedule a formal interview. I'd been expecting it, but it still sent a jolt of anxiety through my system. My entire career, my reputation, everything I'd built over 15 years, all of it under scrutiny because Richard Hartley was willing to burn the world to save himself. Sarah prepped me for the interview like we were going into battle. They're going to ask about every interaction you had with law enforcement in the DA's office. They're going to ask if you identified yourself as a judge. They're going to ask if you expected special treatment. I didn't expect special treatment. I expected my daughter to be treated fairly. Good. Say exactly that. Marcus, you need to understand something. This complaint is baseless, and I think the commission knows it. A father calling the DA to ensure his daughter's assault case is taken seriously is not judicial misconduct. It's parenthood. But they have to investigate because a complaint was filed. They're doing their job. And if they find against me, they won't, because there's nothing to find. You made one phone call, you didn't demand anything. You didn't threaten anyone. You asked for justice. That's not a crime, Marcus. That's not even close to a crime. The interview was scheduled for the following Monday. I had 5 days to prepare, 5 days to document every action I'd taken since Maya's assault, 5 days to prove that I'd been a father first and a judge second, and that there was nothing wrong with that. Thursday brought another development. I was in my home office when Maya knocked on the door. Dad, you need to see this. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a news article from the local paper. Prominent businessman faces domestic violence charges. Richard Hartley, 48, well-known local entrepreneur and philanthropist, has been charged with assault and battery following an alleged incident involving his teenage stepdaughter. Sources close to the investigation suggest that audio evidence of the alleged assault exists and is considered damning by prosecutors. Hartley, who serves on multiple charitable boards and is a major donor to several community organizations, has denied the charges through his attorney, Gregory Whitmore. Mr. Hartley categorically denies these allegations, Whitmore stated. He looks forward to clearing his name in court and exposing this as a campaign of harassment orchestrated by his wife's ex-husband. The case has sparked conversation on social media, with many calling for Hartley's removal from his charitable positions pending the outcome of the trial. I read it twice, then looked up at Maya. How do you feel about this? Weird. Seeing it in print makes it more real, you know? But also good. Like, they're calling him alleged, but the fact that they mention the audio evidence, that they're taking it seriously, it feels like the truth is finally getting out. You're not named in the article. No, I'm grateful for that. I don't know if I'm ready to be public about all this, but I'm glad people know about him. I'm glad his perfect reputation is cracking. The article was just the beginning. By Friday, 3 of the charitable boards Richard served on had asked for his resignation, pending resolution of the legal matters. His business partner of 12 years issued a statement saying they were reviewing the nature of their professional relationship. And perhaps most tellingly, Caroline texted me. Caroline, did you see the news article? Me, yes. Caroline, Richard is losing his mind. He's drinking constantly now, Don. He keeps saying this is all your fault, that you're orchestrating some vendetta. Me, I'm not orchestrating anything. The truth is coming out. That's not vendetta. That's justice. Caroline, he's talking about suing the newspaper, suing you, suing everyone. Me, let him try. Every legal action he takes just shines more light on what he did. Caroline, Marcus, I'm scared. He's getting more erratic. He threw a glass at the wall last night. He's been screaming about how he's going to destroy everyone who's doing this to him. Me, Caroline, you need to leave that house. He's dangerous. Caroline, and go where? He controls everything. The money, the house, everything is in his name. Me, there are resources, shelters, legal aid. I can help you find. Caroline, I can't. Not yet. I can't. I stared at the phone, frustration and concern warring in my chest. Carolyn was trapped in her own prison of fear and financial dependence. And as much as I wanted to help her, I couldn't force her to save herself. But her text had given me something valuable, a window into Richard's deteriorating mental state. He was unraveling, and unraveling people make mistakes. Saturday morning, Sarah called with urgent news. Marcus, we have a problem. Richard's lawyers filed a motion to suppress the audio evidence. On what grounds? They're arguing that Maya made the recording with intent to entrap Richard, that she provoked a confrontation specifically to get evidence against him. They're calling it a manufactured incident. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. A 17-year-old girl with 2 broken ribs manufactured an incident? That's their argument? It's desperate, I know, but we need to take it seriously. They're going to try to paint Maya as a manipulative teenager who planned this whole thing to get custody changed. That's insane. Of course it is, but we need to counter it with evidence. I need Maya to write a detailed statement about why she started recording things, when she started, what prompted her to do it. We need to show that she was documenting a pattern of abuse for her own protection, not setting up an entrapment. She can do that. She's been documenting everything. Good. And Marcus? The hearing on this motion is in 2 weeks. If they succeed in suppressing the audio, our case becomes significantly weaker. They won't succeed. That recording is legitimate evidence of a crime in progress. I agree, but we can't be complacent. Richard has resources, and he's throwing everything at this. That evening, I sat down with Maya and explained the situation. They're saying I planned it? Her eyes were wide with disbelief. I was being beaten, Dad. I didn't plan anything. I was just trying to survive. I know, sweetheart, and we're going to make sure everyone else knows it too. But I need you to write down exactly why you started recording things. Your thought process. What you were hoping to accomplish. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Then she looked up at me with those clear eyes that were so much older than they should be. I started recording because I knew no one would believe me otherwise. What do you mean? Richard is charming, Dad. You know that. Mom knows that. Everyone knows that. He's the kind of person who walks into a room and makes everyone feel special. And I'm just a teenager who was supposedly struggling with the divorce, who had anger issues, who was difficult. That's the narrative Mom and Richard built. So when he started getting worse, when he started getting violent, I knew that if I ever tried to tell anyone, they'd believe him over me. They'd think I was exaggerating, or lying, or being dramatic. So you started documenting. So I started documenting. Not to trap him, not to manufacture anything, just to have proof. To have something concrete that I could point to and say, see, this is real. This happened. I'm not making it up. I was building a record because I knew that my word alone wouldn't be enough against his. I looked at my daughter, this brave, intelligent girl who'd had the foresight to protect herself even while living in a nightmare. Write that down, exactly like you just said it, every word. Will it be enough? It will be more than enough, because it's the truth, Maya. And the truth, clearly stated, is the most powerful argument there is. She spent the rest of the evening writing her statement. I didn't help her. This needed to be in her words, her voice, her truth. When she finished, she handed me the pages with a nervous expression. Is it okay? I read it through once, then again. It was devastating in its simplicity. A teenager's account of living in fear, of being gaslit into doubting her own experiences, of taking desperate measures to preserve evidence of her reality because she knew the world was predisposed to believe her abuser. It's perfect, I said. It's absolutely perfect. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the motion hearing coming up. Richard's lawyers were going to try to suppress the most damning piece of evidence we had. They were going to try to paint my daughter as a schemer rather than a survivor. They were going to throw everything they had at discrediting her. But they'd underestimated her. They'd underestimated both of us. The cracks in Richard's world were spreading. His reputation was crumbling. His support network was dissolving. His carefully constructed image was revealing the monster beneath. And with each passing day, the truth was becoming harder to deny. He was going to fight back harder. I knew that. The more cornered he felt, the more dangerous he'd become. The motion to suppress was just the beginning. There would be more attacks, more manipulations, more attempts to twist reality into something that served his narrative. But here's what Richard didn't understand about truth. It doesn't need to fight. It doesn't need to manipulate or spin or deceive. Truth just needs to exist, clearly and consistently, and eventually it becomes undeniable. The audio recording existed. Maya's injuries existed. Her documented history of abuse existed. Her statement about why she recorded existed. All of it, a tapestry of truth woven so tightly that no amount of legal maneuvering could unravel it. Richard was throwing his money at lawyers and motions and strategies, trying to make the truth disappear. But you can't make truth disappear. You can only delay its emergence. And emergence was coming. Soon everyone would hear that recording. Everyone would hear my daughter screaming while he beat her. Everyone would hear his rage, his violence, his complete lack of control. And no amount of money or charm or connections would be able to explain it away. The cracks were appearing in his foundation. Soon the whole structure would collapse, and I would be there to watch every brick fall. The morning of the suppression hearing dawned gray and cold, the kind of November morning that makes you want to stay under the covers and pretend the world doesn't exist. But the world very much existed, and today it was going to decide whether the most crucial piece of evidence in our case would be allowed. Maya was quiet during breakfast, pushing her cereal around the bowl without actually eating any of it. The bruises on her face had faded to a sickly yellow-green, the visible wounds healing even as the invisible ones remained raw. "You don't have to come today," I told her. "Sarah and I can handle the hearing." "No," her voice was firm. "I need to be there. I need to see him. I need him to see me." "Maya, Dad, I spent a year being invisible in that house, being quiet, being small, making myself disappear so I wouldn't provoke him. I'm done being invisible. I want him to look at me and know that I'm not afraid anymore, that his intimidation doesn't work anymore, that I'm going to be there for every single moment of his downfall. I looked at my daughter, at the steel in her eyes, and I saw something that made my heart swell with pride and break with sorrow all at once. She'd grown up too fast, forced into a maturity that no 17-year-old should have to bear. But she'd emerged from the fire stronger, harder, more resilient than I'd ever imagined. "Okay," I said, "you'll be there." The courthouse was a stately building, all marble and columns, the kind of architecture designed to inspire awe and respect for the judicial system. I'd walked through these doors thousands of times in my career, but today felt different. Today I wasn't Judge Marcus Chen. I was just a father, fighting for his child. Sarah met us at the entrance, her briefcase bulging with documents. She looked sharp, ready for battle. "How are you holding up?" she asked Maya. "I'm ready." "Good. Remember, you might not need to testify today. This is just a motion hearing about the admissibility of evidence. But if the judge wants to hear from you about the circumstances of the recording, just tell the truth, simply and clearly. You've got this." We entered the courtroom and immediately I saw him. Richard Hartley sat at the defense table, flanked by Gregory Whitmore and two junior attorneys. He was wearing an expensive charcoal suit, his hair perfectly styled, his expression composed. The picture of respectable, wrongly accused. But when he saw us walk in, something flickered across his face. Anger, hatred, and beneath it all, fear. Good. He should be afraid. Maya walked past him with her head high, not acknowledging his presence. She took her seat in the gallery, her posture straight and strong. I sat beside her and Sarah moved to the plaintiff's table. The courtroom filled gradually. I recognized some faces, reporters, mostly, attracted by the increasingly public nature of the case. A few other attorneys who'd come to watch. And in the back, almost hidden, Carolyn. My ex-wife looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past month. Her clothes hung loose on her frame, her face drawn and pale. She didn't make eye contact with anyone, just slipped into a seat in the last row like she was trying to disappear. Maya saw her mother and stiffened beside me. I put my hand on her arm, a silent reminder that we were here for justice, not confrontation. "All rise," the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. We stood as the judge entered. Patricia Morrison was known for being fair, thorough, and utterly unimpressed by wealth or status. If anyone could see through Richard's legal maneuvering, it was her. "Please be seated. We're here today on the matter of State versus Hartley, specifically the defense's motion to suppress audio evidence. Mr. Whitmore, you may proceed." Gregory Whitmore stood, buttoning his jacket with the practiced ease of a man who'd made this motion 1,000 times. "Thank you, Your Honor. The defense moves to suppress the audio recording made by the alleged victim on the grounds that it was obtained through entrapment. We will present evidence showing that the recording was part of a premeditated plan to manufacture an incident and gather evidence for a custody dispute, rather than a genuine, spontaneous documentation of events." Judge Morrison's expression didn't change. "In the prosecution's position?" Sarah stood. "Your Honor, the prosecution maintains that the recording is legitimate evidence of a crime in progress, made by a victim seeking to document ongoing abuse. The alleged victim will provide testimony about her reasons for making the recording, and will demonstrate that her actions were those of a frightened teenager trying to preserve evidence of her own experience, not entrapment." "Very well. Mr. Whitmore, call your first witness." Whitmore called a technical expert who testified about the recording itself, when it was made, the device used, the fact that it had been saved and preserved. Standard stuff. Then he called a psychologist who'd been hired by the defense to offer opinions about manipulative behaviors in adolescence. I listened with growing disgust as this so-called expert talked about how teenagers, especially those from divorced families, often engage in attention-seeking behaviors and manipulation of parental figures to achieve desired custody outcomes. Sarah's cross-examination was surgical. "Dr. Reynolds, have you examined Maya Chen?" "No, I have not." "Have you reviewed her medical records from the night of the assault?" "I've seen them, yes." "And you're aware that she had 2 cracked ribs and significant facial bruising consistent with being struck multiple times?" I'm aware of her injuries, yes. In your professional opinion, doctor, is a teenager capable of cracking her own ribs to manufacture evidence? Whitmore objected, but Judge Morrison allowed it. Dr. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. The injuries are certainly real. That's not what I asked. Is a teenager capable of intentionally breaking her own ribs? No, that's not. The injuries were clearly inflicted by another person. So regardless of any manipulation you're theorizing about, the physical assault was real and inflicted by the defendant? The injuries suggest a simple yes or no. Doctor, yes. No further questions. Whitmore tried to recover with redirect, but the damage was done. His expert had just confirmed that regardless of any supposed manipulation, Richard had genuinely assaulted Maya. Then Whitmore made his move. Your Honor, the defense calls Caroline Hartley. A murmur went through the courtroom. I turned to see Carolyn, pale as death, standing from her seat in the back. She walked forward on unsteady legs, her eyes fixed on the floor. Maya grabbed my hand, squeezing hard. Caroline was sworn in and took the witness stand. She looked small up there, diminished, nothing like the confident woman I'd married all those years ago. Mrs. Hartley, Whitmore began smoothly, can you describe your daughter's behavior in the months leading up to the incident in question? Carolyn's voice was barely audible. Maya had been difficult, acting out, getting into arguments with Richard. Would you say she was hostile toward your husband? Sometimes, yes. Did she ever express a desire to live with her father instead? Yes, frequently. And did she discuss strategies for making that happen? Carolyn hesitated. I could see the war playing out on her voice, the fear of Richard, the guilt about Maya, the desperation to find some middle ground that didn't exist. She mentioned wanting to document things, to prove that she wasn't being treated fairly. So she had a premeditated plan to gather evidence against your husband? I don't know if I'd call it premeditated, but she did plan to record things? Yes. No further questions. Sarah stood for cross-examination, and I could see the careful calculation in her eyes. She had to be strategic here. Carolyn was still Maya's mother, and attacking her too harshly could backfire. Mrs. Hartley, you mentioned that Maya wanted to document things. Did she tell you why? Caroline swallowed. She said no one would believe her otherwise. Believe her about what? About how Richard was treating her. And how was Richard treating her? Silence. Caroline's hands were trembling. Mrs. Hartley? He'd become critical, controlling. He'd lose his temper sometimes. Lose his temper how? Yelling, throwing things. He'd punched a hole in the wall once. So your daughter was documenting a pattern of escalating abusive behavior because she feared she wouldn't be believed. Is that accurate? I suppose. Mrs. Hartley, were you present on the night of the assault? Yes. Did you witness the assault? Another pause. Richard was staring at his wife, and even from across the courtroom, I could feel the intensity of that stare, the threat in it. Mrs. Hartley? Yes, I was present. Can you describe what you saw? Carolyn closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears were streaming down her face. I saw my husband hit my daughter. Repeatedly. I saw her trying to protect herself. I saw her fall. I heard her crying, begging him to stop, and I stood there. I did nothing. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Morrison called for order. Mrs. Hartley, Sarah continued gently, based on what you witnessed, was your daughter the aggressor in that incident? No. Was your daughter attempting to provoke your husband? No. Was your daughter doing anything other than trying to survive an attack? No. And was the attack unprovoked? Carolyn looked at Richard then, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. Some final straw breaking. Yes, it was unprovoked. She just asked about spending the weekend with her father. That's all she did. And he attacked her. He beat her. And I let him. Richard shot to his feet. She's lying. Carolyn, what are you doing? We discussed this. Mr. Hartley, sit down immediately. Judge Morrison commanded, her voice sharp as a whip. She's lying. Richard was red-faced now, the charming mask completely gone. This is a conspiracy. They've gotten to her. Mr. Hartley, I will have you removed from this courtroom if you don't sit down and remain silent. Whitmore grabbed Richard's arm, pulling him back down, whispering urgently in his ear. But the damage was done. The entire courtroom had just seen Richard Hartley's composure shatter, had seen the rage that lurked beneath the polished surface. Judge Morrison waited it until order was restored, then turned back to Carolyn. Mrs. Hartley, do you wish to continue? Carolyn's voice was stronger now, steadier. Yes, Your Honor. I want to tell the truth, all of it. I've been living with lies for too long, and I can't do it anymore. Very well. Continue, Ms. Martinez. Sarah took a breath. Mrs. Hartley, your testimony today contradicts the statement you gave to police on the night of the incident. Can you explain that? I lied. Richard told me what to say. He threatened me. He said if I didn't support his story, he'd destroy me. I was terrified of him. I still am, but I can't lie anymore. Not when my daughter's future is at stake. Not when the truth matters this much. No further questions, Your Honor. Whitmore tried to salvage things on redirect, attempted to paint Caroline as an unreliable witness, confused, manipulated by me. But Caroline held firm. She'd finally found her backbone, and she wasn't backing down. After Caroline stepped down, Sarah played the audio recording for the court. 3 minutes and 47 seconds. That's how long it took for Richard Hartley's entire life to collapse. The audio was devastating. There was no other word for it. Richard's voice, slurred with alcohol, screaming obscenities. Maya's voice, small and frightened, trying to placate him. The sound of blows landing. Maya's cries of pain. Caroline's voice, begging him to stop, but doing nothing to intervene. I watched Richard as the audio played, watched the color drain from his face, watched the reality of his situation finally penetrate his denial. When it ended, the courtroom was silent. Even Judge Morrison, who'd surely heard countless pieces of disturbing evidence in her career, looked shaken. Your Honor, Sarah said quietly, I'd like to call Maya Chen to testify about the circumstances under which she made this recording. Proceed. Maya stood. She walked to the witness stand with that same steel in her spine I'd seen that morning. She was sworn in and took her seat, her eyes clear and focused. Maya, Sarah began gently, can you explain why you started recording your interactions with your stepfather? Maya took a breath. I started recording because I knew no one would believe me otherwise. Can you elaborate? Richard was very charming. Everyone loved him. And I was just a teenager who everyone thought was struggling with the divorce, who had issues. So when he started getting verbally abusive, I knew that if I told anyone, they'd think I was exaggerating. When he started getting physically intimidating, I knew they'd think I was being dramatic. I needed proof, not to trap him or set him up, but to have evidence that what was happening to me was real. And on the night of the assault, did you intentionally provoke your stepfather? No, I just asked if I could spend the weekend with my dad. That's all, but I wasn't trying to start anything. I was just asking about seeing my father. And his response? He exploded. He started screaming about respect, about gratitude, and then he started hitting me. I managed to hit record on my phone and slip it into my pocket because I knew that this was the moment, that if I survived this, I would finally have proof that no one could deny. Were you afraid? Maya's voice cracked for the first time. I was terrified. I thought he might kill me. He was so angry, so out of control. I thought that night might be the night he went too far. No further questions. Whitmore's cross-examination was brutal but ineffective. He tried to trip Maya up, to make her seem calculating and manipulative, but she answered every question with the same clear, steady honesty. She didn't embellish. She didn't exaggerate. She just told the truth, simply and consistently, and the truth was devastating. After Maya stepped down, Judge Morrison called a brief recess. I hugged my daughter as soon as she reached me. You did amazing, I whispered. I'm so proud of you. I just told the truth. I know, that's why it was amazing. When court reconvened, Judge Morrison didn't waste time. I've heard the arguments. reviewed the evidence, and considered the testimony. The defense's motion to suppress the audio recording is denied. A wave of relief washed over me so intense I thought I might collapse. The recording was made by a minor in her own home for the purpose of documenting what she reasonably believed to be ongoing abuse. This falls well within the bounds of one-party consent and is admissible as evidence. Furthermore, the testimony provided today, particularly from Mrs. Caroline Hartley, corroborates the events depicted in the recording. There is no evidence of entrapment or manufactured circumstances. The evidence stands. Richard's face was ashen. Whitmore was already gathering his papers, probably preparing for the next motion, the next attempt to derail justice. But they'd lost this round, and in losing, they'd revealed their desperation. Outside the courthouse, Maya stood in the pale November sunlight, breathing deep. "We won," she said quietly. "We won this battle. The war isn't over yet." "I know, but Dad, did you see him when the audio played? When Mom testified? He knows. He knows he's losing. He knows his whole world is crumbling." "Yes, he knows." Good. That single word, spoken with quiet satisfaction, carried the weight of a year's worth of suffering finally being validated. As we walked to the car, I saw Caroline standing by the courthouse steps, alone, looking lost. Maya saw her too. She stopped. "Mom?" Caroline turned, her eyes red-rimmed. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. I failed you. I failed you in every way a mother can fail a child, and I don't know how to make that right." Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked over to her mother and very carefully hugged her. "Thank you for telling the truth today," she said. "It matters. It matters more than you know." Carolyn sobbed, clutching her daughter. "I should have told it sooner. I should have protected you. I should have." "I know, but you told it now, and now is what matters." I watched them, mother and daughter, beginning the long process of healing. It wouldn't be easy. The wounds were deep. But maybe, just maybe, the truth could be the foundation for rebuilding. We drove home in contemplative silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The suppression motion was denied. Caroline had turned. The audio would be played at trial for the whole world to hear. Richard Hartley's reckoning was coming, and he'd brought it on himself. The week following the hearing was when Richard Hartley's life truly began to disintegrate. It started with the resignations. 3 of the 4 charitable boards he sat on formally requested his resignation, citing the need to maintain organizational integrity during legal proceedings. The 4th board didn't bother with formalities. They simply removed him by unanimous vote. His business suffered next. The partnership he'd built over 15 years, the one that had made him wealthy enough to believe he was untouchable, began to fracture. His partners issued a joint statement expressing deep concern about recent allegations and announced they were exploring options for restructuring leadership. In normal speak, they were pushing him out. Sarah called me with updates almost daily, each one more satisfying than the last. "The DA's office is pushing forward aggressively," she told me on Wednesday. "They're preparing for trial. The grand jury indicted him on charges of assault and battery, domestic violence and child abuse. Class A felonies, Marcus. He's looking at serious prison time." "What about bail?" "He posted it, but the conditions are strict. No contact with Maya, obviously. Surrendered his passport. Regular check-ins with law enforcement. He's not going anywhere." "And Caroline?" "That's more complicated. She's cooperating fully with the prosecution now. She's given a detailed statement about everything. The pattern of abuse, Richard's drinking, her role in covering it up. The DA is considering her options regarding charges against her for failure to protect and making false statements to police. But they're more focused on Richard right now. Is she safe? She left the house, filed for divorce. She's staying with her sister in Connecticut. Richard's lawyers are already trying to freeze assets and make things difficult for her, but she's got representation now. She'll be okay, eventually. The divorce filing made news. Local philanthropist's wife files for divorce amid assault charges. The article was careful with its language, alleged and accused peppered throughout, but the picture it painted was clear. The golden couple was crumbling, and the golden husband was looking increasingly tarnished. Maya followed the news with a mixture of satisfaction and something that looked like grief. Her life, her family, everything she'd known was being dismantled in real time. And even though it was necessary, even though it was justice, it was still painful. I don't feel as good about this as I thought I would, she admitted one evening as we ate dinner. What do you mean? I thought when he started losing everything, I'd feel happy or vindicated, but mostly I just feel sad. Sad that it came to this. Sad that Mom married him in the first place. Sad that I spent a year being afraid. Sad that everything had to be destroyed for the truth to come out. That's called emotional maturity, I said, recognizing that justice and happiness aren't always the same thing, that something can be necessary and still be painful. Is it always this complicated? Always. She pushed her pasta around her plate. Dad, do you think Mom will ever forgive herself? I think she'll spend a long time trying to. Whether she succeeds is up to her. And do you think I'll ever forgive her? I set down my fork and looked at my daughter carefully. That's a question only you can answer, and you don't have to answer it today. Forgiveness isn't a requirement, Maya, it's a choice. And it's not something you owe anyone, not even your mother. But isn't holding on to anger bad for me? Anger isn't the same as unforgiveness. You can be angry about what happened. You have every right to be angry and still move forward with your life. Forgiveness, if it comes, will come in its own time. And if it doesn't come, that's okay too. Some things are unforgivable. That doesn't make you a bad person for not forgiving them. She was quiet for a long moment. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. The Judicial Conduct Commission cleared me that Friday. I'd had my interview, presented my documentation, explained every action I'd taken since Maya's assault. The interview had been thorough but fair, and in the end, the commission found no evidence of misconduct. Judge Chen acted as any concerned parent would, their letter read. His single phone call to the DA's office was to request that his daughter's case be taken seriously, not to demand special treatment or specific outcomes. There is no evidence of improper use of his judicial position, and this complaint appears to have been filed in an attempt to discredit Judge Chen in connection with related legal proceedings. I read that last line twice, savoring it. They'd seen through Richard's ploy. They'd recognized it for what it was, a desperate attempt to attack the messenger when he couldn't defeat the message. I called Sarah immediately. I saw it, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Congratulations, Marcus. Your record remains spotless. More importantly, they called out the complaint for what it was. Yes, they did, and that's going to matter when we go to trial. Richard tried to dirty you up, and it backfired. It makes him look even more desperate, more willing to manipulate the system. What's next? Next, we prepare for trial. The DA is pushing for a date in the new year. They want to move quickly while the evidence is fresh and the witnesses are prepared. Richard's lawyers are trying to delay, naturally, but I don't think they'll succeed. The judge on the case, Morrison, thankfully, isn't known for tolerating stalling tactics. Will Maya have to testify? Probably. Are you worried about her? No, I said, and realized I meant it. She's the strongest person I know. The following week brought the most unexpected development yet. I was in my chambers, finally back at work, though my focus wasn't what it used to be, when my clerk knocked on my door. Judge Chen, there's someone here to see you, says it's urgent. Who? Gregory Whitmore. I stared at David, certain I'd misheard. Richard Hartley's attorney? Yes, sir, he's in the waiting area. Says he needs to speak with you privately. Every instinct told me to refuse, to send him away. But curiosity got the better of me. Send him in. Whitmore entered my chambers looking considerably less polished than he had in court. His suit was slightly rumpled, his tie loosened. There were dark circles under his eyes. Judge Chen, thank you for seeing me. Mr. Whitmore, I should tell you that anything you say to me could potentially... I'm not here as Richard Hartley's attorney. Not anymore. He sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. As of this morning, I've withdrawn from the case. Withdrawn? Why? He was quiet for a moment, seeming to weigh his words carefully. Judge Chen, I've been a defense attorney for 25 years. I've represented people accused of terrible things. That's my job, to ensure that everyone, regardless of what they're accused of, gets fair representation under the law. I believe in that principle deeply. But there are limits. Richard Hartley crossed those limits, not just in what he did, the assault, the abuse, but in how he's handled this case. He's lied to me repeatedly. He's tried to manipulate evidence. He's attempted to suborn perjury from his wife. He's filed baseless complaints against you to muddy the waters. And worst of all, he shows no remorse. None. He genuinely believes he's the victim in all of this. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're up against. And because my conscience won't allow me to continue representing him. I can't ethically defend someone who's actively working to pervert justice rather than seeking it. What's he planning? Whitmore hesitated. I can't share privileged communications, but I can tell you this. He's spiraling. He's drinking heavily. He's become paranoid, convinced that you're orchestrating some grand conspiracy against him. He's talking about how he's going to destroy everyone who's done this to him. He's volatile, Judge Chen, dangerously volatile. A chill ran down my spine. Are you suggesting he might become violent? I'm suggesting that a man who beat a teenage girl when he felt disrespected is not someone who handles loss of control well. And right now, he's losing control of everything. His reputation, his business, his marriage, his freedom, potentially. Men like Richard Hartley, men who've built their identity on power and status, they can become very dangerous when all of that is stripped away. Is Maya in danger? The protective order is in place. He knows violating it would be catastrophic for his case. But be vigilant, Judge Chen. That's all I'm saying. After Whitmore left, I sat in my chambers for a long time, his warnings echoing in my mind. Richard was unraveling, losing everything, backed into a corner with no way out. Cornered animals are the most dangerous kind. I called Sarah immediately and relayed the conversation. I'll increase security recommendations around Maya, she said. Document everything. If Richard so much as drives down your street, we'll have him arrested for violating the protective order. Should I be worried? I think we should be cautious. But Marcus, Richard's not stupid. He knows that any contact with Maya destroys his case completely. He's got to be betting everything on winning at trial. But he can't win at trial. The evidence is too strong. You know that. I know that. But does Richard know that? From what Whitmore says, Richard still thinks he can charm his way out of this. He still believes his money and connections will save him. Delusion. The most dangerous kind. The kind that doesn't recognize when it's lost. That evening, I told Maya about Whitmore's warning, carefully, not wanting to frighten her, but needing her to be aware. So he's losing his mind, she said quietly. He's losing his control, which for someone like Richard is the same thing. And he might do something crazy. We don't know that, but we're going to be careful. She was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window. You know what the worst part is, Dad? Part of me isn't surprised. I knew somewhere deep down that when everything started falling apart for him, he'd blame everyone but himself. That's who he is. That's who he's always been. He takes no responsibility. Everything is someone else's fault. His business problems were because of incompetent partners. His drinking was because of stress. The abuse was because I was disrespectful. And now his downfall is because of your vendetta. You're very insightful about him. I had to be. Survival mechanism. When you live with someone like that, you learn to read them, to predict their moods, to know when to be quiet, when to disappear, when to appease. It's exhausting, Dad, living that way. You don't have to live that way anymore. I know, and that's the only thing that matters. The next few days were quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your skin prickle with anticipation. Richard had hired new attorneys, a whole team of them from a big city firm known for aggressive tactics. They filed a flurry of motions to change venue, motions to recuse the judge, motions to dismiss charges on various technical grounds. All of them were denied. The trial date was set for January 15th, less than 2 months away. Caroline called me the night the date was announced. January 15th, she said. It's really happening. It's really happening. I'm going to have to testify about everything, about what I saw, what I did, what I failed to do. Yes, everyone's going to know what kind of mother I was, what kind of wife, what kind of person. Carolyn, I deserve it. I know I deserve it. I let my daughter be abused. I chose my husband over my child. I lied to protect him. I deserve whatever judgment people pass on me. You also told the truth when it mattered most. You stood in that courtroom and you told the truth, knowing it would destroy you. That counts for something. Does it count enough? That's not for me to say. She was quiet for a long time. Marcus, I wanted to thank you for being the father Maya needed, for being there for her when I wasn't, for fighting for her when I should have been fighting for her. She's my daughter. Fighting for her isn't heroic. It's automatic. Still, thank you. After I hung up, I found Maya in her room, studying for her upcoming exams. She'd thrown herself into her schoolwork with a focus I hadn't seen before, as if academic success was something she could control in a world that had been chaos. Mom called, I said from the doorway. How is she? Scared, guilty, preparing herself for the trial. Maya set down her pen. I've been thinking about something. What's that? When all this is over, the trial, the custody stuff, all of it, I want to do something to help other kids in situations like mine. Kids who are being abused but don't think anyone will believe them. Kids who feel trapped. What kind of something? I don't know yet. Maybe volunteering at a shelter, or advocacy work, or just telling my story publicly once it's all done. So other kids know they're not alone, that there is a way out, that the truth can set them free. I leaned against the door frame, looking at this remarkable young woman who'd emerged from a year of abuse, not bitter or broken, but determined to transform her pain into purpose. I think that's a beautiful idea. Yeah? Yeah. And Maya, that's the thing about truth. It doesn't just free you. It has the power to free others too. Your truth, your story, your courage, it's going to matter to people you haven't even met yet. I hope so. I know so. She smiled, a real smile, the kind I'd been missing, and turned back to her studies. As I walked back to the living room, I thought about everything that had led us here. The phone call at 1 a.m., the police station, the evidence, the hearings, the slow, methodical unraveling of Richard Hartley's life. We'd done nothing dramatic. No schemes, no revenge plots, no attempts to destroy him. We'd simply told the truth. Again and again, in every forum that would listen. We'd presented the evidence. We'd trusted the system. And the truth was doing what it always does, cutting through lies like sunlight through fog. Richard Hartley was falling, and he was falling because his foundation had always been false, built on charm instead of character, on image instead of integrity, on power instead of principle. When you build your life on lies, the truth is your undoing, and our truth was undeniable. The trial was coming, and with it, the final chapter of Richard Hartley's reign. January 15th arrived with a bitter cold that seemed appropriate for what was to come. I'd barely slept the night before, my mind racing through scenarios, testimony, potential complications. Maya surprisingly had slept soundly, that peaceful sleep of someone who's made peace with what's coming. Ready? I asked her over breakfast. She looked up from her untouched toast, her expression calm. I've been ready for weeks. I just want this to be over. Today's just opening statements. You probably won't testify for a few days. I know, but being there, seeing it start, that matters. Sarah met us at the courthouse, her demeanor all business. She wasn't representing us in the criminal trial. That was the DA's purview. But she was there for support and to ensure our interests were protected. The DA's office is feeling confident, she told us as we climbed the courthouse steps. The evidence is solid. Caroline's testimony is devastating. And the audio? Well, you've heard it. There's no spinning that. What about Richard's new lawyers? They're good. Expensive and good. They're going to try everything. Attacking Maya's credibility, painting Richard as a stressed businessman who made one mistake, suggesting the injuries were exaggerated. But Marcus, at the end of the day, They can't change what's on that recording. They can't make those broken ribs disappear. They can't erase what happened. The courtroom was packed. I shouldn't have been surprised. The case had become something of a local sensation. The fall of a prominent philanthropist, the courage of a teenage victim, the dramatic courtroom revelations. Media coverage had been extensive, and public opinion had shifted dramatically against Richard over the past 2 months. We took our seats in the gallery, Maya beside me, her hand finding mine and squeezing tightly. Across the aisle, I saw faces I recognize. Members of the charitable boards Richard had been forced to resign from, business associates, country club members, all there to witness the end of a man they'd once admired. Richard entered with his legal team, 3 attorneys now, all wearing expressions of determined confidence. He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him, his expensive suit hanging slightly loose. His face was thinner, more drawn, and there was a nervous energy about him that I'd never seen before. He saw us, and his expression darkened. Pure hatred radiated from his eyes as he looked at Maya, then at me. I stared back, unflinching, letting him see that his intimidation meant nothing anymore. Maya didn't look at him at all. She kept her eyes forward, her posture straight, her expression serene. The quiet strength of someone who knows the truth is on their side. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. Judge Morrison took her seat, her expression grave. We're here today for the trial of Richard Andrew Hartley on charges of assault and battery, domestic violence, and child abuse. Is the prosecution ready? Assistant District Attorney Michael Torres stood. He was a seasoned prosecutor, mid-40s, with a reputation for methodical case building. Ready, Your Honor. Defense, Richard's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Lawrence Pike, rose smoothly. Ready, Your Honor. Very well. Mr. Torres, you may proceed with your opening statement. Torres stood, buttoning his jacket, and walked to stand before the jury, 12 ordinary citizens who would decide Richard Hartley's fate. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about power, about what happens when a man with money, status, and influence believes he's above the consequences of his actions. About what happens when that man beats a child and expects to walk away unscathed. He paused, letting his words settle. The defendant, Richard Hartley, is charged with assault and battery, domestic violence, and child abuse against his 17-year-old stepdaughter, Maya Chen. On the night of October 12th, in his own home, Richard Hartley attacked this teenager. He struck her repeatedly. He broke 2 of her ribs. He split her lip. He left her bruised and bloody and terrified. Torres walked to a display board where photographs of Maya's injuries were displayed. Her swollen face, the bruising, the medical documentation. These are not allegations. These are facts, documented by medical professionals. These injuries were inflicted by the defendant. He doesn't deny that. What he claims, what his defense will try to convince you of, is that a 48-year-old man, 6 feet 2 inches tall, was somehow defending himself against a teenage girl who weighs 115 pounds. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Morrison called for order. But you won't have to take anyone's word for what happened that night. You won't have to weigh credibility or parse testimony, because the victim, showing remarkable presence of mind even while being attacked, managed to record the assault. You will hear that recording. You will hear the defendant, his voice slurred with alcohol, screaming profanities at a child. You will hear him striking her. You will hear her screams of pain, her pleas for him to stop. You will hear everything. Torres let the weight of that settle over the jury. The defense will try to paint this as a family dispute gone wrong, a moment of lost temper. They'll suggest the victim provoked her stepfather, that she was difficult, that she manufactured this incident for some purpose. They'll try to make you doubt what your own ears will tell you. He turned back to the jury, his expression earnest. But the truth is simple. Richard Hartley beat a child. He beat her because she asked to visit her biological father for the weekend. He beat her because she dared to suggest that his authority wasn't absolute. He beat her because he believed he could. And when it was over, he tried to have her arrested for assaulting him. He tried to use his wealth and connections to make himself the victim, Torres's voice hardened. The evidence will show you who the real victim is. The evidence will show you a pattern of escalating abuse that culminated in a brutal attack. The evidence will show you a man who believed his money made him untouchable. The evidence will show you the truth. And when you've seen it all, heard it all, I'm confident you'll return a verdict that holds Richard Hartley accountable for his actions. Thank you. He sat down and the courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison nodded to the defense. Mr. Pike. Lawrence Pike stood, straightening at his tie. He had the bearing of a man who'd won many cases, the confidence of someone who believed in his ability to create reasonable doubt from thin air. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution has given you a compelling story, a villain and a victim, a powerful man and a helpless child. It's a story designed to trigger your emotions, to make you angry, to make you want to punish someone. He walked slowly before the jury box. But I'm going to ask you to do something difficult. I'm going to ask you to set aside your emotions and look at the facts. Not the story the prosecution wants to tell you, but the actual facts of what happened on October 12th. He paused dramatically. Richard Hartley is not a monster. He's a successful businessman, a philanthropist who has donated millions to charitable causes, a man who opened his home to his wife's daughter and tried to be a father figure to her. He's human, flawed, yes, imperfect, certainly, but not a monster. Pike turned to face the jury directly. The facts are these. Maya Chen has struggled with her parents' divorce. She's been in conflict with her mother's new marriage from the beginning. She's made no secret of her desire to live with her father instead. And on the night in question, after months of escalating tension, she confronted Richard Hartley in his own home. He held up a hand. Now, did Richard lose his temper? Yes. Did he use more force than he should have? Possibly, but was this the premeditated attack of an abuser? Or was this a man who, after being physically confronted by an aggressive teenager, reacted in the heat of the moment? Was this assault and battery, or was this self-defense that went too far? Pike's expression softened. Richard Hartley isn't proud of what happened that night. He wishes it had gone differently. He wishes he'd walked away. But in the moment, faced with what he perceived as a threat, he reacted. He reacted badly, but that doesn't make him an abuser. That doesn't make him a monster. That makes him human. He walked back toward the defense table. The prosecution wants you to listen to that recording and feel outraged. But I want you to listen to it carefully. Listen for context. Listen for what precipitated the physical confrontation. Listen for a frightened man defending himself, perhaps too aggressively, but defending himself nonetheless. Pike turned back to the jury one final time. At the end of this trial, you'll have to decide whether the prosecution has proved beyond reasonable doubt that Richard Hartley committed these crimes. Beyond reasonable doubt. Not probably, not likely, beyond reasonable doubt. I submit to you that when you examine all the evidence, all the context, all the circumstances, you'll find that doubt. You'll find that this isn't the clear-cut case of abuse the prosecution wants to present. You'll find that the truth, as always, is more complicated. He sat down. Maya's hand tightened on mine. He's trying to make it seem like I attacked him, she whispered. He's trying, I whispered back. But the evidence won't support it. Trust the truth. Judge Morrison called a brief recess before the first witness. In the hallway, Sarah found us. They're going with the provoked and self-defense angle, she said. It's their only play. But Marcus, it's a weak play. The audio recording doesn't support it. Maya's injuries don't support it. It's desperation. Will it work? Not if the jury listens to that recording. No one who hears that audio is going to believe Richard was defending himself. It's too clear, too damning. When court reconvened, Torres called his first witness, the emergency room physician who treated Maya that night. Dr. Elizabeth Warren took the stand with the calm professionalism of someone who testified many times. She described Maya's injuries in clinical detail, the facial contusions, the split lip, the 2 cracked ribs, and offered her medical opinion. In my professional assessment, these injuries were consistent with repeated blows from an assailant, not from a fall or from reasonable defensive force. The rib fractures, in particular, require significant force to inflict. This was not a minor altercation. Pike's cross-examination tried to suggest that the injuries could have been sustained in other ways, that Maya might have fallen during the confrontation, that the rib fractures might have been pre-existing. Dr. Warren shut down each suggestion methodically. Mr. Pike, I've been treating assault victims for 15 years. These injuries were inflicted by someone striking this young woman repeatedly and with force. There is no other reasonable medical explanation. The second witness was Officer Rodriguez, the female officer who'd taken Maya's initial statement at the police station. She described Maya's demeanor that night, frightened, in pain, but coherent and consistent in her account. Did the alleged victim seem coached or rehearsed? Torres asked. Not at all. She seemed like a terrified teenager who'd just been beaten. Her account was detailed and consistent, with the kind of specific details that genuine trauma produces. Pike's cross-examination focused on the initial confusion at the police station, how Richard had claimed Maya attacked him first, how there had been uncertainty about who the aggressor was. Officer Rodriguez, isn't it true that when you first arrived at the scene, you weren't sure who had assaulted whom? Initial reports were conflicting, yes, Mr. Hartley claimed self-defense. But once I saw Ms. Chen's injuries and heard her account, it was clear who the victim was. Clear to you, but you're not a judge or jury, are you, officer? No, but I know what a beating victim looks like, Mr. Pike, and I know what a liar looks like. Maya Chen was a victim. The day ended with the prosecution setting the stage, medical evidence of serious injuries, law enforcement testimony about Maya's credibility, all of it building toward the moment everyone was waiting for, the audio recording. That night, Maya and I sat in my living room, both of us exhausted but wired. The defense attorney kept saying I provoked Richard, Maya said quietly. He's going to try to make me look like the bad guy. He's going to try, but Maya, all he has are theories and suggestions. You have evidence. Indisputable, undeniable evidence. When they play that recording, his whole self-defense narrative falls apart. What if the jury doesn't see it that way? Then they're not listening to the evidence. And this jury seems like they're listening. She pulled her knees up to her chest, looking young and vulnerable in a way she rarely did anymore. I have to testify soon, don't I? Probably in the next day or two. Are you scared? A little. Pike is going to try to trip me up, make me look like I planned everything. He's going to make me relive the worst night of my life in front of strangers. Yes, he's going to do all of that. But here's what you need to remember. You have one job on that stand. Tell the truth, simply and consistently. Don't try to be clever or dramatic. Just tell the truth. The truth is your armor, Maya. It's unbreakable. You really believe that? I've spent 15 years on the bench watching truth prevail over lies. Not always immediately, not always easily, but eventually, inevitably the truth wins. And your truth is so clear, so well documented, so undeniable that no amount of legal maneuvering can obscure it. I hope you're right. I am. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow the prosecution plays the recording. Tomorrow, everyone hears the truth. She hugged me goodnight, and I sat alone in the living room for a long time after she'd gone to bed. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, a courtroom full of people would hear my daughter screaming as she was beaten. Tomorrow, the jury would hear Richard Hartley's true nature exposed in audio form. Tomorrow, the truth would be unleashed in its most powerful form. And Richard Hartley's only remaining shield, his charm, his excuses, his money, would prove utterly inadequate against the devastating simplicity of recorded reality. I'd spent my entire career believing in the power of evidence, in the ability of truth to prevail over power and money and influence. Tomorrow would test that belief, and I had no doubt that the truth would pass the test. It always did. The courtroom was utterly silent as the audio recording played. 3 minutes and 47 seconds of truth, echoing through the chamber, impossible to deny, impossible to explain away. Richard's voice slurred and vicious. You ungrateful little bitch. Maya's voice trembling. I just asked about the weekend. Please, Richard, I didn't mean... The sound of impact. Sharp. Brutal. Maya's cry of pain. You think you can disrespect me in my own house? You think you can run to your loser father every time things don't go your way? Please stop, please. More impacts. The sounds of someone trying to protect themselves. The sounds of someone failing. Caroline's distant voice. Richard, Richard, stop. She needs to learn her place. The unmistakable sound of a body falling. A gasp of pain as ribs crack. Don't you dare cry. Don't you dare. You brought this on yourself. 3 minutes and 47 seconds. When it ended, the silence that followed was deafening. I looked at the jury. Several of them were visibly shaken. One woman was wiping tears from her eyes. A man in the front row was staring at Richard with undisguised disgust. I looked at Richard. He sat rigid at the defense table, his face drained of all color. His lawyers flanked him, but their expressions suggested they knew the battle had just been lost. I looked at Maya beside me. Her face was composed, but I could see her hands trembling slightly. Hearing it again, hearing herself screaming, had to be traumatizing. Are you okay? I whispered. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Torres stood. Your Honor, the prosecution rests for the day. Judge Morrison nodded. We'll recess until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. The defense may begin their case at that time. As we filed out of the courtroom, Pike caught up with us in the hallway. Judge Chen, might I have a word? I tensed, but Maya put her hand on my arm. It's okay, Dad. Pike looked tired. The confident attorney from yesterday's opening statement seemed diminished. I wanted you to know, my client wishes to discuss the possibility of a plea agreement. I stared at him. A plea agreement. Now, after that recording was played, my client recognizes that the trial is not going as hoped. He's willing to consider, Mr. Pike, that's between your client and the DA's office. We're not parties to plea negotiations. Of course, I just thought, if Maya would be willing to provide a victim impact statement supporting leniency. Stop right there, my voice was cold. You want my daughter, after everything she's been through, to advocate for leniency for the man who broke her ribs? The man whose voice she just heard screaming at her while he beat her? I understand it's a difficult ask. It's not a difficult ask. It's an obscene ask. Good day, Mr. Pike. I took Maya's arm and walked away. He wanted me to help Richard? Maya said in disbelief. After everything? Desperate men make desperate requests. The recording destroyed their case, and they know it. Good. The next morning, the defense began their case. Pike's strategy became clear immediately. He was going to attack Maya's credibility and paint Richard as a victim of circumstance. His first witness was a psychologist who testified about parental alienation syndrome, the idea that children of divorce sometimes develop hostility towards step-parents due to influence from the non-custodial parent. In your professional opinion, could Ms. Chen's behavior toward Mr. Hartley be explained by parental alienation? Pike asked. It's certainly possible. Children in high-conflict divorce situations sometimes develop antagonistic relationships with step-parents, especially when they feel caught between households. Torres's cross-examination was devastating. Dr. Mitchell, have you examined Maya Chen? No. Have you reviewed her school records, her social history, her interactions with her peers? No. So you're offering opinions about a child you've never met based on what exactly? Based on patterns commonly seen in patterns, not this specific case, thank you. No further questions. Pike then called character witnesses for Richard, business associates, club members, people who testified to his generosity, his charm, his dedication to charitable causes. Each one was asked the same question. Did you ever see any indication that Mr. Hartley was capable of violence? And each one gave the same answer. No, never. Torres' cross-examination was consistent. Were you present in Mr. Hartley's home on the evening of October 12th? No. Then your testimony about his character is based on public interactions, not private behavior, correct? I suppose yes. Thank you. Then Pike called Caroline to the stand. This was a risky move. Caroline had already testified against Richard at the suppression hearing. But Pike was hoping to create doubt, to suggest that Caroline's testimony had been influenced by her own divorce proceedings, by her own desire to protect herself from prosecution. Mrs. Hartley, or I should say Ms. Chen, as you've returned to your maiden name, isn't it true that you're currently facing potential criminal charges related to this incident? Carolyn sat straight in the witness box, her expression calm. She'd changed since the last time I'd seen her. There was a steadiness about her now, a clarity that had been missing for years. That's correct. I may face charges for failure to protect and for making false statements to police. And isn't it true that cooperating with the prosecution could potentially lead to leniency in your own case? It might. That's not why I'm cooperating. Then why are you cooperating, Miss Chen? Carolyn looked directly at Maya in the gallery. Because I spent a year protecting the wrong person. I protected my husband when I should have protected my daughter. I lied for him when I should have spoken the truth. I failed her in every way a mother can fail a child. I can't undo that failure, but I can stop lying now. I can tell the truth now. And the truth is that Richard Hartley beat my daughter, unprovoked, while I watched and did nothing. You're aware that your testimony is severely damaging to your ex-husband's case? He's not my ex-husband yet. The divorce isn't final, but yes, I'm aware. And you have no concerns about the bias in your testimony? Carolyn's expression hardened. Mr. Pike, I heard the same recording everyone else heard. I was there that night. I know exactly what happened. My testimony isn't biased. It's truthful. And the truth is that Richard lost control and beat my daughter. No amount of questioning is going to change that truth. Pike tried a few more angles, but Caroline held firm. She'd found her backbone, and she wasn't backing down. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The defense calls Maya Chen to the stand. I felt Maya stiffen beside me. This was it. She stood, smoothing her skirt. She dressed carefully for this day. Conservative, mature, professional. She looked older than her 17 years. You've got this, I whispered. She nodded and walked to the witness stand. After being sworn in, she took her seat, her hands folded in her lap, her expression composed. Pike approached her with a friendly smile, the kind of smile that made my skin crawl because I knew it was calculated. Maya, thank you for being here today. I know this must be very difficult for you. It is, but it's important. Absolutely. Now, I just have a few questions about the events leading up to October 12th. You've been living with your mother and Mr. Hartley for about 3 years, correct? That's correct. And during that time, was there friction between you and Mr. Hartley? Yes, especially in the last year. Can you describe that friction? Maya took a breath. Richard was critical of me, of my grades, my appearance, my friends, my attitude. Nothing I did was good enough. He would lose his temper over small things, me coming home 5 minutes late, or not doing chores exactly as he wanted. He was controlling and harsh. And how did you respond to this criticism? At first, I tried to do better, to meet his expectations, but they kept changing. Eventually, I started to withdraw. I spent more time in my room. I tried to avoid him. Did you ever argue back, challenge his authority? Sometimes, when I felt he was being unfair, yeah. And on those occasions, did the arguments ever become heated? On his side, yes. He would scream, throw things. I tried to stay calm. But there were occasions where you raised your voice as well? Maya hesitated slightly. Yes, sometimes I would try to defend myself and my voice would rise. So there was mutual conflict, would you say? No. Maya's voice was firm. There was a grown man screaming at and intimidating a teenager, and occasionally that teenager would try to stand up for herself. That's not mutual conflict. That's abuse of power. Pike's smile faded slightly. Let's talk about the recording you made. You testified that you started recording your interactions with Mr. Hartley months before the incident. Is that correct? Yes. Why did you start recording? Because I knew no one would believe me otherwise. Richard is charming. Everyone loved him. I was just a teenager with issues. I needed proof that what was happening to me was real. So you were planning ahead, gathering evidence. I was protecting myself. But isn't gathering evidence the same as planning? No, planning would imply I intended to create an incident. I was documenting what was already happening. There's a difference. Pike changed tactics. On the night of October 12th, you approached Mr. Hartley to ask about spending the weekend with your father, correct? Yes. Did you know he'd been drinking? I could tell he'd been drinking, yes. And you knew that when he'd been drinking, his temper was worse? Yes. Yet you chose that moment to approach him with a request you knew might upset him? Torres stood. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is implying the victim provoked her own assault. Sustained. Mr. Pike, rephrase. Pike nodded. Why did you choose that particular moment to ask about the weekend? Because it was Thursday, and if I was going to see my dad that weekend, I needed to know so I could pack and make arrangements. It was a reasonable time to ask a reasonable question. And when you asked, how did Mr. Hartley respond? He immediately became angry. He started screaming about respect and gratitude. He grabbed my arm. I tried to pull away and he hit me. Did you hit him back? No. Did you try to push him? I tried to protect myself. I put my arms up to block his blows, but I never hit him or pushed him. The scratches on Mr. Hartley's arms are from me trying to get his hands off me while he was beating me. Defensive scratches, not offensive ones. Pike paused, seeming to reconsider his approach. Maya, you've stated that you wanted to live with your father. Is that true? Yes. And this incident certainly helped achieve that goal, didn't it? Torres was on his feet again. Objection. Counsel is suggesting the victim orchestrated her own assault. Sustained. Mr. Pike, I won't warn you again. Pike took a breath. Let me rephrase. Maya, is it possible that in your desire to live with your father, you might have exaggerated certain aspects of your interactions with Mr. Hartley? Maya looked directly at Pike, her gaze steady and unflinching. Mr. Pike, I have 2 healed rib fractures. I have medical records documenting my injuries. I have an audio recording of your client beating me while I screamed for him to stop. I have my mother's testimony confirming she watched it happen. I have 6 months of video documentation of your client's abusive behavior. What exactly would I be exaggerating? Pike had no response to that. No further questions. Torres stood for redirect. Maya, I have just one question. On the night of October 12th, when you asked Mr. Hartley about visiting your father, did you do so with the intention of provoking him? No, I just wanted to see my dad. Thank you, no further questions. Maya stepped down from the witness stand, her head high, her composure intact. She returned to her seat beside me, and only then did I see the slight trembling in her hands. You were magnificent, I whispered. I just told the truth. Exactly. The defense rested shortly after, having called no further witnesses. What else could they do? Their case had crumbled under the weight of evidence. Closing arguments were scheduled for the following morning. That evening, Maya and I sat in companionable silence. Both of us drained from the intensity of the trial. It's almost over, she said finally. Almost. Do you think they'll convict him? Think the evidence is overwhelming. The jury saw the medical records, heard the testimony, listened to the recording. They saw Richard's own wife testify against him. They heard you, consistent, incredible. Yes, I think they will convict him. And then what? Then sentencing. Then you continue to heal. Then we build our life, whatever that looks like. And Mom, your mother's facing her own journey, her own consequences. But she's taken the first step, she told the truth. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Dad, thank you for believing me, for fighting for me, for not giving up. I'm your father, Maya. Fighting for you isn't something I chose to do. It's who I am. Still, thank you. I pulled her close, mindful of ribs that had healed but still ached sometimes. Tomorrow it's closing arguments. Then the jury deliberates. And then justice. Justice, she repeated. I never thought that word could mean so much. It means everything. It's the foundation of everything else. Without justice, truth is just noise. With justice, truth becomes transformation. Did you just come up with that? I've been saving it, she laughed, that pure, genuine laugh I've been missing for so long. Tomorrow the lawyers would make their final arguments. Tomorrow, 12 strangers would begin deciding Richard Hartley's fate. Tomorrow the system would prove whether it could be trusted to deliver justice even when the accused was wealthy and connected and charming. I believed it would. I had to believe it would, because my daughter had staked her healing on that belief, and she deserved to be right. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. 4 hours that felt like 4 years. Maya and I waited in the courthouse hallway, neither of us able to sit still. She paced. I stood by the window, watching snow fall on the city below, each flake a tiny reminder that time was passing, that the world was moving forward even while ours hung suspended. Sarah had stayed with us, her presence a steady comfort. 4 hours is actually pretty quick for a case this serious, she said during hour 3. It means they're not hung up on the facts. They're not wrestling with doubt. Or it means they're deadlocked and giving up, I replied. Marcus, stopped catastrophizing. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimony was consistent. The defense never laid a glove on Maya's credibility. Have faith in the system you have dedicated your career to. She was right. I knew she was right. But faith is harder when it's your daughter's justice on the line. Maya stopped her pacing and came to stand beside me at the window. Remember when I was little, she said, and we'd watch snow fall together? You'd tell me each snowflake was unique, just like each person. That no two were exactly alike. I remember. I used to think that was beautiful. Now I think it's lonely. All those snowflakes, each one different, each one alone. They're not alone, though. They're all falling together. Each one unique, but part of the same storm. She leaned her head against my shoulder. That's either very profound or very cheesy. Can it be both? She almost smiled. At 3:47 p.m., the bailiff appeared in the hallway. Jury's back. My heart stopped. Restarted. Raced. We filed back into the courtroom, taking our seats. The gallery was fuller than before. Word had spread that a verdict was imminent. Reporters, observers, curious citizens, all crammed into the benches, waiting. Richard sat at the defense table, his jaw tight, his hands clenched on the table in front of him. His lawyers flanked him, their expressions carefully neutral. Carolyn was there too, in the back row again, her face pale but determined. Judge Morrison entered, and we all rose. Please be seated. I understand the jury has reached a verdict. Bailiff, please bring in the jury. The 12 jurors filed in, their faces giving nothing away. Professional, composed, carrying the weight of a man's fate in their collective judgment. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Morrison asked. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stood. We have, Your Honor. On the count of assault and battery, how do you find? We find the defendant guilty. A wave of emotion crashed through me. Relief, vindication, justice. On the count of domestic violence, how do you find? We find the defendant guilty. Maya's hand found mine, squeezing so hard I thought my bones might crack. On the count of child abuse, how do you find? We find the defendant guilty. Guilty. On all counts. The courtroom erupted. Voices, gasps, the sound of reporters scrambling for their phones. Judge Morrison called for order, her gavel sharp against the bench. I looked at Richard. His face had gone completely white, drained of all blood, all color, all pretense on. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked exactly like what he was, a man facing the consequences of his own actions. His lead attorney was already standing. Your Honor, we request immediate bail pending sentencing. Denied. The defendant has been convicted of violent crimes against a minor. He'll be remanded to custody until sentencing. Judge Morrison turned to Richard. Mr. Hartley, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers. Sentencing will be scheduled for 3 weeks from today. Bailiff, take the defendant into custody. 2 bailiffs approached Richard. He stood, his movements mechanical, shock still written across his features. As they led him away, he looked back, not at his lawyers, not at the gallery, but directly at Maya. And my daughter, my brave, strong, resilient daughter, looked back at him with an expression of pure peace. No hatred, no fear, no triumph, just peace. The peace of someone whose truth had been believed. The peace of someone who'd been vindicated. The peace of someone who was finally, irrevocably free. Outside the courthouse, The winter air hit us like a wall of cold clarity. Snow was still falling, blanketing the city in white. And for a moment, we just stood there, breathing, existing in this new reality. Sarah hugged us both. You did it. You actually did it. We didn't do anything, I said. We just told the truth. That's everything, Marcus. In a world where money and power can buy silence and compliance, telling the truth is everything. Reporters approached, microphones extended, questions shouted. I put my arm around Maya protectively. Not today, I told them. We have no comments today. We made our way to the car, leaving the chaos behind. Once inside, Maya let out a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her. It's over. The trial is over. The healing is just beginning. I know, but Dad, he's going to prison. He's actually going to prison for what he did to me. Yes, he is. People believe me. A jury of strangers heard my story and believed me. They did more than believe you. They recognized the truth in everything you said. They saw through his charm and his money and his expensive lawyers, and they saw the truth. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I pulled her close. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. All of it. Relief, sadness, anger, exhaustion. You've earned every emotion. I feel free, she whispered. For the first time in over a year, I feel free. The sentencing hearing was 3 weeks later. Richard Hartley stood before Judge Morrison, no longer in his expensive suit, but in the orange jumpsuit of the incarcerated. He'd lost more weight. His hair, usually perfectly styled, was disheveled. He looked diminished in every way. Mr. Hartley, Judge Morrison began, you have been convicted of assault and battery, domestic violence, and child abuse. These are serious crimes made more serious by the fact that your victim was a minor in your care, a child who should have been able to trust you to protect her, not harm her. Richard's new attorney, Pike had withdrawn after the conviction, spoke briefly about Richard's charitable contributions, his previous good standing in the community, his willingness to seek counseling. Judge Morrison was unmoved. Mr. Hartley, I've reviewed the evidence in this case. I've listened to that recording multiple times. I've read the victim impact statements. And what I see is a pattern of behavior that culminated in a brutal assault on a child. Your charitable donations don't erase that. Your standing in the community doesn't erase that. Your willingness to attend counseling now that you've been caught doesn't erase that. She leaned forward. You had every advantage, Mr. Hartley. Wealth, status, connections. And you used those advantages to abuse and control, to avoid accountability, to paint yourself as the victim. That ends today. On the count of assault and battery, I sentence you to 5 years in state prison. On the count of domestic violence, I sentence you to 4 years. On the count of child abuse, I sentence you to 6 years. These sentences will run consecutively for a total of 15 years in state prison. 15 years. Richard staggered as if physically struck. Additionally, upon release, you will be required to register as a convicted child abuser. You will have no contact with Maya Chen, directly or indirectly, for the remainder of your life. Any violation of this order will result in additional charges. She looked at Richard with something like disappointment. Mr. Hartley, you had the opportunity to be a positive force in a young woman's life. Instead, you chose violence and control. These consequences are entirely of your own making. Court is adjourned. As the bailiffs led Richard away, 15 years of his life now mapped out in a prison cell, Maya turned to me. 15 years, she said quietly. Is that enough? She thought for a moment. It's justice, whether it's enough. I don't know if any sentence could undo what he did, but it's justice, and justice matters. Yes, it does. Carolyn approached us in the hallway, hesitant, unsure of her welcome. Maya, could we talk, just for a moment? Maya looked at me, then back at her mother. Okay. They stepped aside, and I watched them, mother and daughter, separated by a year of failed protection and broken trust, trying to find their way back to each other. I couldn't hear what they said, but I saw Maya nod several times, saw Caroline crying, saw Maya tentatively reach out and touch her mother's arm. Small steps, tiny bridges built over vast chasms. When Maya returned to me, her expression was thoughtful. What did she say? She said she's sorry. that she knows sorry isn't enough, but it's all she has. She said she's in therapy, working through why she chose him over me. She said she doesn't expect me to forgive her, but she hopes someday I might be able to. And what did you say? I said I'm not ready to forgive her. Not yet, maybe not ever, but I'm willing to try to understand. And maybe that's a start. That's very mature of you. I'm tired of being angry, Dad. Anger is exhausting. I've been angry for a year at Richard, at Mom, at the situation, and the anger was justified. But carrying it forward, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. I want to be free, really free, and that means letting go of the anger eventually. Eventually doesn't have to be today. I know, but it can be someday. We drove home through streets that were starting to show signs of spring, snow melting, early buds on trees, the world waking up from its winter sleep. Dad, I've been thinking about what comes next. What do you mean? After all of this, the trial, the sentencing, all of it, what comes next for me, for us? What have you been thinking? I want to finish high school strong, get into a good college, study psychology, I think. I want to understand why people do what they do, why they make the choices they make, why someone like Richard becomes what he becomes, why someone like Mom enables what she enables, why someone like me survives what I survived. Those are good questions. And I want to help other kids, kids who are going through what I went through. I want to be a voice for them, to show them that it gets better, that the truth can set them free. You're already doing that, you know. Your story, your courage, it's already inspiring people. I know, I've gotten messages, kids reaching out, telling me their stories, asking for advice. It's overwhelming sometimes, but also empowering. Like all this pain wasn't for nothing. Like it can mean something. Pain always means something when you transform it into purpose. Another one of your judge sayings? No, that one's original, just for you. She smiled, that full, genuine smile that I'd missed so much during her year of fear. That evening, we sat on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The city spread out before us, millions of lives playing out in apartments and houses and offices, each one a story of struggle and triumph, of truth and lies, of justice and injustice. Dad? Yeah? Thank you for everything, for believing me when I called that night, for fighting for me, for being the father who never gave up. You don't have to thank me for being your father. I know, but I want to. Because you showed me something important through all of this. What's that? That truth matters, that justice is possible, that the right thing isn't always the easy thing, but it's always the right thing. You showed me that a single person standing firm in the truth can move mountains, can take down powerful men, can change everything. You did that, Maya, not me. You're the one who had the courage to tell the truth. You're the one who recorded the evidence, who testified, who stood firm. You're the hero of this story. We're both heroes, and Mom too eventually when she finally told the truth, and Sarah and the DA and the jury who believed us. We're all heroes because we all stood for the truth. That's a nice way to think about it. It's the true way to think about it. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the sky darkening into twilight. What happens now? Maya asked softly. Now you heal, you grow, you live. You take everything you have learned from this nightmare and you use it to become stronger, wiser, more compassionate. You don't let what happened define you, but you let it inform you. You become who you were always meant to be, and you do it with the knowledge that you're someone who can face the worst and survive. And you, Dad, what happens to you? I go back to my courtroom. I continue to preside over cases, to seek truth and deliver justice. But I do it with a deeper understanding now of what's at stake for the people in my courtroom, of how important it is that the system works, of what it means when truth prevails. Will you think of me? When you're hearing cases, I'll think of you every single day. You're the reason I believe in justice. You're the proof that truth matters. You're my heart, Maya, walking around outside my body, brave and strong and resilient. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and we watched as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Dad? Yeah? I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Yes, sweetheart, we are. And for the first time in what felt like years, I believed it completely. If you've stayed with me through this story, through the terror of that midnight phone call, through the pain of seeing my daughter's injuries, through the long fight for justice, I want to leave you with something. The truth is powerful, not dramatic truth, not embellished truth, not truth dressed up in revenge or wrapped in schemes. Simple, quiet, documented truth. When my daughter called me from that police station, broken and afraid, she had one weapon: the truth of what had happened to her. She'd had the foresight to document it, the courage to preserve it, and the strength to tell it clearly and consistently. And that truth, laid bare in documents and recordings and testimony, was enough to bring down a wealthy, powerful, connected man who thought his money made him invincible. Richard Hartley is in prison today, not because I orchestrated some elaborate revenge, not because we schemed or manipulated or destroyed. He's in prison because the truth was told again and again, clearly and irrefutably, until no one could deny it anymore. That's the revenge, if you want to call it that. The elegant, quiet, devastating revenge of letting the truth speak for itself. If you're in a situation like Maya's, being hurt, being silenced, being made to feel like no one will believe you, know this: document everything. Tell the truth. Trust that the truth has power even when the person hurting you seems to have all the power. And if you're a parent like me, watching from a distance, sensing something's wrong but unable to reach your child, keep trying. Keep the lines of communication open. Let them know you believe them, that you'll fight for them, that their truth matters to you. Because in the end, truth is the only weapon that never runs out of ammunition. Truth is the only foundation that doesn't crumble. Truth is the only path to real justice, real healing, real freedom. My daughter taught me that. She taught a federal judge who'd spent 15 years believing in truth that sometimes you don't truly understand what you believe in until you see it tested. And tested we were, and the truth prevailed. It always does.